At 3:11 a.m., the entire global network of Virexon Technologies collapsed, wiping out billions of dollars in transactions within minutes. In the middle of the chaos, CEO Olivia Bennett was forced to make the most humiliating call of her career, to the man she publicly fired 3 months earlier. That man was Noah Hayes, a quiet single father who spent his days fixing servers in the basement while raising his 7-year-old daughter alone. But Olivia had no idea that the shy single dad she dismissed was secretly the genius who built the entire infrastructure keeping her empire alive. This is a story about arrogance, redemption, and discovering what real power actually looks like. Stay with me until the end, and if you enjoy this story, hit that like button and comment with your city so I can see how far this tale travels across the world. The emergency notification came through at exactly 3:11 a.m., and Olivia Bennett knew immediately that her life was about to fall apart. She was awake when it happened, had been awake for hours, actually staring at quarterly projections on her tablet while her penthouse apartment overlooked a city that never seemed to sleep. 30 years old, youngest CEO in Virexon Technologies history, and lately she'd been wondering if the insomnia was worth the corner office. Then her phone started screaming. Not buzzing, not chiming, screaming, every alert she'd configured for catastrophic system failures going off simultaneously in a chorus of digital panic that made her heart stop before her brain even processed what was happening. She grabbed the phone with shaking hands. The screen was flooded with red. Every dashboard, every monitoring system, every backup protocol, all red, all failing, all collapsing in real time like dominoes made of billion-dollar contracts. No, she whispered. No, it. She pulled up the network status. The main screen showed a map of Virexon's global infrastructure, normally a constellation of steady green nodes spanning 6 continents. Now it looked like someone had taken a flamethrower to it. Green turned yellow, yellow turned orange, orange bled into red, and red just disappeared. Entire data centers going dark. Singapore, Frankfurt, São Paulo, Seattle, one after another, like watching stars die. Her hands were still shaking when she called Marcus Reeves, her CTO. He picked up on the first ring, which meant he was already awake, which meant this was even worse than she thought. "Tell me you're seeing this," she said. "I'm at the office." His voice was tight, clipped. Marcus never got rattled, but right now he sounded like a man watching his house burn down. "You need to get here, now." "What happened?" "I don't know. We don't know. The new protocols we implemented last month, something triggered a cascade failure. We're losing everything, Olivia. Everything." She was already moving, grabbing clothes from her closet without bothering to turn on the lights. The backups? The backups are failing too. Whatever this is, it's eating through every redundancy we have. That's not possible. "Yeah, well, tell that to the system." She heard him yelling at someone in the background, his voice cracking at the edges. "Just get here fast." The line went dead. Olivia dressed in 30 seconds flat. Jeans, a wrinkled button-down she didn't bother tucking in, shoes without socks. She looked like hell and didn't care. Her Tesla was already pulling itself out of the parking garage by the time she hit the elevator, the autonomous systems responding to the emergency beacon she'd activated from her phone. The streets were empty at this hour, streetlights painting everything in shades of amber and shadow. She watched the city blur past while her phone kept screaming, kept showing her the real-time devastation unfolding across every continent where Virexon had a presence. Transaction systems offline, client databases corrupted, security protocols compromised, billions of dollars in processing capacity just gone. Her father had built this company from nothing, spent 40 years turning Virexon into the backbone of global digital infrastructure. Banks, hospitals, governments, they all depended on systems her father's team had created, and she'd been CEO for barely 18 months before burning it all down. The office building looked wrong when she pulled up. Too many lights on, too many cars in the parking lot for 3:30 in the morning. She badged through security and hit the elevator, watching the numbers climb while her stomach dropped. 27th floor. Executive level, where they'd built the new command center after she'd approved the modernization project. The elevator doors opened on chaos. "Need to isolate the Frankfurt servers before—" "Already tried that. It's spreading faster than—" "Clients are calling. What do I tell them?" "Don't tell them anything until we know what the hell is—" Marcus spotted her first. He looked 10 years older than he had yesterday, his expensive suit wrinkled, his silver hair standing up in places where he'd obviously been running his hands through it. "Conference room," he said. "Now." She followed him through the maze of cubicles where her best engineers were hunched over keyboards, their faces lit by screens full of error messages. Nobody looked up when she passed. They were too busy trying to stop the bleeding. The conference room was worse. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, but nobody was admiring the view. The entire far wall was covered in monitors showing system diagnostics that all told the same story: catastrophic, cascading failure across every major node. 6 people sat around the table. The heads of infrastructure, security, client services, legal, all of them looked like they'd aged a decade in the last hour. "Talk to me," Olivia said. Marcus pulled up a timeline on the main screen. At 3:08 a.m., routine maintenance triggered an automated update across the Singapore data center. Standard procedure. We've done it 1,000 times. But this time, something in the new architecture protocols we implemented last month didn't play nice with the legacy systems. "What kind of something?" We're still figuring that out, but whatever it was, it created a feedback loop. The system tried to compensate, which triggered safety protocols, which overwhelmed the backups, which cascaded into every connected node. Singapore went down first. Then Frankfurt tried to absorb the load and collapsed under the weight. Sao Paulo, Tokyo, London, Seattle. He gestured at the screens. "Everything we've built over the last 40 years is eating itself alive, and we can't stop it." Olivia felt cold despite the climate control. "The new protocols, those were supposed to make us more resilient." "Yeah." Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. Turns out modernization and resilience aren't the same thing. So fix it, roll back the updates, restore from backup, rebuild from shit. "We can't." That was Jennifer Park, head of security. She looked like she'd been crying. The new architecture replaced core infrastructure that was deliberately isolated before. "We unified everything to improve efficiency, remember? Made it all interconnected, which means there's nowhere left to fail over to. It's all one system now, and that system is dying." Olivia sat down hard. "How long until complete failure?" "At the current rate?" Marcus checked his tablet. 6 hours. Maybe 8 if we get lucky." "And then what?" "And then every transaction we're processing stops. Every client database we're hosting becomes inaccessible. Every security system we're managing goes dark." He met her eyes. "Banks can't process payments. Hospitals lose patient records. Governments lose access to citizen data. The lawsuits alone will bankrupt us within weeks. That's assuming we don't face criminal charges for negligence." The room went quiet. "There has to be something we can do," Olivia said. "There is." That was David Chen, the infrastructure lead who'd championed the modernization project. He wouldn't meet her eyes. "There's one person who might be able to stop this. Someone who understood the old architecture better than anyone." "Then call them." "You fired him 3 months ago." Olivia felt something crack in her chest. "No. Noah Hayes." Marcus pulled up a personnel file on the screen. The photo showed a tired-looking man in his early 30s with messy brown hair and a flannel shirt that had seen better days. He built most of the legacy infrastructure, created redundancies and safeguards we're still finding buried in the code. The new engineers called his work paranoid and over-engineered. It turns out he was preparing for exactly this kind of scenario, Sayed. She remembered that day. Remembered Noah standing in front of the board, trying to explain why they shouldn't rush the modernization. He'd been quiet, almost apologetic, like he was afraid of wasting their time. She'd thought he was just resistant to change, scared of losing relevance. "You embarrassed him in front of everyone," Marcus said quietly. "Called him obsolete. Said his concerns were just fear of the future. He never defended himself." "No. He just packed his desk and left." Marcus closed the file, but before he did, he removed something. Some kind of manual override protocol buried in the old systems. "We found references to it in the code, but we can't activate it. Only he knew how." Olivia's stomach twisted. "He sabotaged us?" "No." Jennifer shook her head. "He removed a safeguard he created. There's a difference. The system worked fine without it until tonight, when everything else failed. Now, it's the only thing that might save us." So call him, offer him whatever he wants. We tried. Marcus gestured at his phone. 10 calls. He's not picking up. Then go to his house. Olivia, I'll go. She stood up. I'll go, right now. Where does he live? Marcus pulled up an address. East Side. Apartment complex near the industrial district. But it's almost 4 in the morning, and you fired him. You really think he's going to... I don't care what he thinks of me. She grabbed her keys. I care about stopping this company from collapsing. Get me that address. The drive across town felt longer than it should have. The city was waking up now. Delivery trucks making early rounds, janitors heading to office buildings, the first hints of dawn starting to gray the eastern sky. None of them knew that somewhere in data centers across the globe, the digital infrastructure holding modern civilization together was actively disintegrating. Noah's apartment building looked exactly like she'd expected. Old, worn, the kind of place where people lived when they couldn't afford anything better. The parking lot was cracked concrete with weeds growing through. The exterior paint was fading. A broken playground sat unused behind a chain-link fence. This was where one of the most brilliant engineers in her company ended up after she fired him. She found his apartment on the 3rd floor and knocked. No answer. She knocked again, harder. Still nothing. Noah Hayes? She called through the door. It's Olivia Bennett from Virexon, called through the... I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but it's an emergency. The company is... The door opened 6 inches. A little girl stood there, maybe 7 years old, wearing pajamas with dinosaurs on them. She had Noah's brown hair and the same cautious eyes. My dad's asleep, the girl said. Olivia hadn't been expecting this. I'm sorry. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't important. Is he... Can I talk to him? He had a bad night. He doesn't sleep good anymore. There was something in the way she said it that made Olivia's chest hurt. This little girl was used to protecting her father, used to running interference with the world while he tried to hold himself together. I understand, but people might lose their jobs if I can't talk to him. A lot of people. The girl studied her for a long moment. Then she said, "Wait here," and closed the door. Olivia waited in the hallway, listening to whispered voices inside. A man's voice, rough with sleep. The girl's higher pitch, explaining something. A long pause. The door opened again. This time Noah stood there, and Olivia barely recognized him. He'd lost weight since she'd last seen him, enough that his old flannel shirt hung loose on his frame. His hair was longer, messier. He had dark circles under his eyes that spoke of months of bad sleep. But what struck her most was his expression. Not angry, not surprised, just tired. "Olivia," he said. His voice was flat, carefully neutral. "It's 4 in the morning. I know. I'm sorry. The company... There's been a catastrophic system failure. Everything's collapsing. We can't stop it. And you want me to fix it?" "Yes." He leaned against the door frame. Behind him, Olivia could see a small living room with furniture that had definitely been bought secondhand. There were crayons scattered on a coffee table, a half-finished puzzle, drawings taped to the walls, childish stick figures holding hands with a dinosaur. 3 months ago, Noah said, I stood in a board meeting and told you this exact thing would happen. I explained that the new architecture was removing safeguards we needed, that modernization for its own sake was dangerous. Do you remember what you said to me? Olivia swallowed. Yes. You said I was a technician afraid of change. You said my concerns were outdated. You said, he paused, you said the future had no room for people who couldn't adapt. I was wrong. Geez. Yeah. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You were, but you were also very convincing. The board believed you. The new engineers believed you. Everyone believed that I was just some obsolete maintenance worker clinging to systems I built because I was scared of being replaced. Noah, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, but right now your company is burning down, and you need the obsolete maintenance worker to save it. He shook his head. Do you have any idea what the last 3 months have been like? I spent 2 weeks sending out resumes to companies that all wanted to know why Virexon let me go. Nobody wants to hire someone the youngest CEO in tech history called obsolete. I'll fix that. I'll give you whatever reference you want. I'll personally call... I'm working retail now. His voice was still flat, but Olivia heard something underneath it. Something broken. Nights at an electronics store, stocking shelves and helping college kids pick out laptops. It's the only job I could get that let me be home during the day with Lily, because she's 7 and I'm all she has. And I'm not letting her come home to an empty apartment just so I can sit in another server room being ignored by people who think credentials matter more than competence. The little girl, Lily, appeared behind him. She was watching Olivia with those careful, protective eyes. "Please," Olivia said, "I know I don't deserve your help, but this isn't about me. If Virexen collapses, thousands of people lose their jobs. People who have families, who have kids like—" She gestured at Lily. "Like your daughter. They didn't humiliate you. They don't deserve to suffer because I was too arrogant to listen." Noah was quiet for a long time. Then Lily tugged on his shirt. "Dad," she said softly, "if you can save them, shouldn't you try?" Something crossed his face, pain maybe, or resignation. He looked down at his daughter, and Olivia saw the moment he broke. "Go back to bed, sweetheart," he said. "Daddy has to go out for a while." "Will you be home for breakfast?" "I don't know." Lily hugged him tight. "Okay, be safe." She disappeared back into the apartment. Noah watched her go, then turned back to Olivia. "If I do this," he said, "we're clear. You don't owe me. I don't owe you. After this, we're done. Whatever you want. And you're going to listen to me. Every word. No arguments. No second guessing. No checking with your fancy engineers. Because they're the ones who broke it, and I'm the only one who knows how to fix it." "Yes, absolutely." He grabbed a jacket from inside the apartment. "Let's go." They didn't talk on the drive back to Virexen. Noah sat in the passenger seat staring out the window while Olivia navigated through early morning traffic. She wanted to say something, apologize again, try to explain, make him understand she hadn't meant to destroy his life, but his silence was a wall she couldn't breach. When they pulled into the Virexen parking lot, dawn was breaking over the city. The sky was turning from black to gray to the pale blue of early morning. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it felt like watching a countdown timer tick towards 0. They rode the elevator to the 27th floor. The doors opened on the same chaos Olivia had left an hour ago, except now it was worse. More people, more panic, more screens full of red error messages. Marcus saw them first. He looked at Noah like he'd seen a ghost. "You came," Marcus said. She begged. Noah's voice was neutral. "Where are the server rooms?" "Basement level." "But Noah, the system. I know what the system's doing. I designed the system." He started walking toward the elevators. "Someone show me what you broke." "What?" They took him to the basement. Olivia had never been down here before. It was maintenance territory, the unglamorous foundation supporting everything happening in the glass towers above. The hallways were concrete and fluorescent lights. The server rooms were temperature-controlled chambers humming with the sound of thousands of machines trying desperately to keep working. Noah stood in the doorway of the main server room and went absolutely still. "Jesus," he whispered. Olivia looked past him. The room was a nightmare. Screens showing diagnostic cascades, warning lights flashing across racks of hardware. The temperature was too high. She could feel it. The climate control system struggling against the heat of machines working beyond their capacity. "How long?" Noah asked. Marcus checked his tablet. 4 hours? Maybe 5. "Show me what you did." They walked him through it. The modernization project, the new protocols, the unified architecture that was supposed to make everything more efficient. Noah listened without interrupting. His face was unreadable. When they finished, he said, "You removed every safeguard I built. We thought they were redundant." They weren't redundant, they were insurance. I built them after spending 2 years analyzing every possible failure scenario. I over-engineered on purpose because I knew eventually someone would come along who thought they knew better. We were trying to improve. You were trying to cut costs. His voice was still calm, but Olivia heard steel underneath. Every safeguard I built added overhead, made the system slower, less efficient, less profitable. "So, you ripped them out and congratulated yourselves on modernizing. Can you fix it?" Olivia asked. Noah walked into the server room. He moved through the racks like he was remembering an old house he used to live in, running his hands over hardware, checking connections, reading diagnostics on screens that meant nothing to Olivia but apparently told him everything. Maybe, he said finally. There's a manual override buried in the legacy systems. I built it as a last resort, something that could force a hard reset across all nodes simultaneously. It's dangerous, could corrupt data, cause permanent damage, but it's the only way to stop a cascade failure this advanced. Then do it. It's not that simple. The override requires physical access to each primary node: Singapore, Frankfurt, Sao Paulo, Tokyo, London, Seattle. Someone has to be physically present at each location to enter the activation codes. Marcus shook his head. We don't have people at all those sites, not people with access to core systems. Then get them there, Bao. Now. I'll walk them through it remotely. Noah pulled out his phone. I need a secure line to each location and a direct feed from every diagnostic system. And I need everyone to shut up and let me work. For the next 3 hours, Olivia watched Noah Hayes become someone she'd never seen before. He stood in the center of the server room with his phone in one hand and a laptop balanced on a rack in front of him, coordinating 6 teams across 6 continents while simultaneously rebuilding core systems on the fly. His voice was steady, patient, explaining complex procedures to engineers who had no idea what they were doing, but trusted him because they had no other choice. Singapore, I need you to access Terminal 347. Yes, the one behind the cooling unit. I know it's hard to reach. Do it anyway. Frankfurt, you're reading the wrong diagnostic. The one I need is under legacy systems, not current architecture. Check again. Sao Paulo, stop. Stop right now. You're about to trigger a secondary cascade. Back out of that terminal and listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. He didn't sleep, didn't eat, didn't take breaks. He just worked, his fingers flying across the keyboard while he talked 6 different teams through procedures most of them didn't understand. And slowly, so slowly Olivia almost didn't notice at first, the screen started showing less red. Marcus saw it too. It's working. He's actually doing it. Don't celebrate yet. Noah didn't look up from his screen. We're not done. But they were getting there. Node by node, system by system, Noah was pulling Virexin back from the edge. He'd enter a command that shouldn't work, and somehow it would. He'd talk an engineer through a procedure that sounded insane, and somehow it would stop a cascade before it started. He was rebuilding the entire infrastructure in real time, using knowledge he'd accumulated over years that nobody else bothered to learn. At 8:47 a.m., Noah entered the final override code. Every screen in the server room went dark for 3 seconds that felt like an eternity. Then they flickered back to life, one by one, showing green. The cascade had stopped. Marcus let out a breath he'd been holding for hours. You did it. Noah closed his laptop. He looked exhausted, more exhausted than Olivia had ever seen anyone look. His hands were shaking slightly, and there was a tremor in his shoulders that suggested he was about to collapse. The system's stable, he said, but fragile. You need to rebuild the architecture properly. Put the safeguards back. Stop treating efficiency like it's more important than resilience. He looked at Olivia. And you need to fire whoever convinced you to remove them in the first place. Done, she said. Anything you want. Name it. I want to go home. He headed for the door. My daughter's probably awake by now. She makes these dinosaur pancakes on Saturday mornings, and I promised I'd help her. Wait, Olivia followed him. Noah, wait, we don't need to talk about anything. You needed someone to save your company. I did. We're done. We're not done. I owe you. You don't owe me anything. He stopped at the elevator and turned to face her. 3 months ago, you made it very clear what you thought of me. You were wrong, and now you know it. And that's punishment enough. I don't need your gratitude or your guilt. I just need you to leave me alone. The elevator doors opened. He stepped inside. I'm sorry, Olivia said. I'm so sorry. Noah looked at her for a long moment. Something in his expression softened slightly. Not forgiveness exactly, but maybe understanding. I know, he said, but sorry doesn't fix anything. You can't apologize your way out of consequences. The doors closed. Olivia stood in the empty hallway and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Ashamed. Not embarrassed, not uncomfortable, but genuinely, deeply ashamed of who she'd become. She'd spent so long chasing success, climbing ladders, proving herself in rooms full of men who thought she was too young and too female to lead. that she'd forgotten what actual competence looked like. Noah Hayes had never needed to prove anything. He'd just quietly done the work, built the systems, prepared for disasters that might never come. And when they did come, he'd saved thousands of jobs without asking for recognition or reward. While she'd been playing CEO in a corner office, he'd been stocking shelves at night and making dinosaur pancakes in the morning because his daughter needed him more than his ego needed validation. She went back to the server room. Marcus was coordinating cleanup efforts, directing engineers to start assessing damage and planning repairs. He looked up when she entered. "He really did it," Marcus said. "I didn't think it was possible. The system was 90% collapsed, and he brought it back." "I know. We should hire him back. Immediately. Full position, executive salary. Whatever it takes to—" "He won't come back." Olivia looked at the screens showing stable systems Noah had saved while she stood by uselessly. "And I don't blame him." She spent the rest of the day in crisis management mode, calling clients, reassuring board members, coordinating with legal and PR to control the narrative. By evening, the media was calling it a miracle recovery. Virexon's stock had stabilized. The lawsuits that seemed inevitable that morning had been averted. Nobody outside the company would ever know how close they'd come to complete collapse. That night, Olivia sat in her penthouse apartment and thought about Noah's living room, the secondhand furniture, the crayon drawings on the walls, his daughter's careful eyes, protecting her father from a world that had already hurt him enough. She thought about the way he'd worked for 3 straight hours without complaint, saving a company that had fired him. The way he'd refused her gratitude because he didn't need validation from someone who'd already proven they couldn't recognize value when they saw it. And she thought about his last words. "You can't apologize your way out of consequences." He was right. Sorry meant nothing. She'd destroyed his career, humiliated him publicly, forced him into retail work while he raised his daughter alone. An apology was just words. It didn't fix anything, but maybe action could. She pulled out her laptop and started typing. Not a memo, not a press release. A complete proposal for restructuring Virexon's technical division, reinstating safeguards, rebuilding with resilience instead of efficiency, creating positions for engineers who valued competence over credentials. She couldn't undo what she'd done to Noah Hayes, but she could make sure she never did it to anyone else. The board meeting started at 9 a.m., Monday morning, and Olivia walked in knowing she was about to make enemies. The conference room was full. 12 board members, half a dozen executives, legal counsel sitting in the corner taking notes. Everyone looked tired. The crisis had eaten their weekend, and now they wanted answers. Richard Caldwell sat at the head of the table where Olivia's father used to sit before he retired. Richard was 63, silver-haired, the kind of man who wore success like cologne. He'd been pushing the modernization project harder than anyone, promising the board that upgrading their infrastructure would increase profit margins by 15%. He smiled when Olivia entered, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Olivia, glad you could join us." He gestured to an empty chair. "We were just discussing Saturday's incident." Incident. Olivia set her laptop on the table. That's an interesting word for a complete system collapse that almost bankrupted the company. Almost being the operative word, thanks to quick thinking by our technical team, we managed to, thanks to Noah Hayes. She opened her laptop. "The engineer I fired 3 months ago on your recommendation, the one you called obsolete." The room went quiet. Richard's smile tightened. "I'm not sure this is the time to relitigate personnel decisions." "I think it's exactly the time." She pulled up the analysis she'd spent all Sunday preparing. "Because the only reason Virexon still exists is because the man you convinced me to fire came back and saved us. And I'd like to understand why we fired him in the first place." He was resistant to necessary changes. He was right about necessary safeguards. She turned her laptop so everyone could see the screen. The modernization project removed 17 critical redundancies that Noah built into the legacy systems. Every single one of them was designed to prevent exactly what happened Saturday morning. And every single one of them was eliminated because they reduced efficiency by, she checked her notes, 3%. 3% across our infrastructure represents millions in annual savings, Richard said. And Saturday's collapse cost us $40 million in 4 hours, not counting legal fees, client compensation, or reputation damage. So please explain to me how that math works. One of the other board members, Patricia Vance, who'd been with the company since before Olivia was born, leaned forward. Are you saying the modernization project caused this? Ish. I'm saying we removed safeguards we didn't understand because we trusted people who prioritized profit over stability. Olivia looked directly at Richard. Olivia looked, and when the one person who understood those systems tried to warn us, we fired him. He had his chance to make his case, Richard said. His voice was still smooth, but Olivia heard the edge underneath. He failed to convince anyone that his outdated architecture was worth preserving. He didn't fail to convince anyone. We failed to listen. There's a difference. This is ridiculous. Richard stood up. You're trying to blame the board for your management decisions. You were the one who approved his termination. You're right, I did. Because you stood in this room and told me he was holding the company back. Because your engineers, the ones who promised me the new architecture was superior, convinced me that Noah's concerns were paranoia. She stood too. And I believed you. That's on me. But now I'm asking you to take responsibility for what you convinced me to do. The project was sound. What happened Saturday was a freak occurrence. It was preventable. Noah told us it would happen. He explained exactly how it would happen. And we called him obsolete instead of listening. Patricia spoke up again. What are you proposing? Olivia took a breath. This was the part that would either save the company or end her career. I want to reinstate every safeguard Noah built. I want to rebuild the architecture properly, with resilience prioritized over efficiency. And I want David Chen and his entire team removed from the infrastructure division. The room erupted. 3 people started talking at once. Richard's face went red. You can't be serious, he said. Completely serious. David's team broke the system. I'm not letting them near it again. They were implementing the board's directive. Then maybe the board's directive was wrong. Richard slammed his hand on the table. The room went silent. This is exactly the kind of emotional decision-making that makes people question your leadership, he said quietly. You're young, Olivia. Inexperienced. We've been patient with your learning curve. But this, he gestured at her laptop. This is you trying to deflect responsibility by scapegoating people who were only following orders you approved. I'm not scapegoating anyone. I'm fixing a problem. By destroying the careers of engineers who dedicated months to this project? They nearly destroyed the company. I'd say their careers are the least of our concerns. Patricia raised a hand. Let's all take a breath. Richard, sit down. Olivia, walk us through your proposal, specifically. What? Olivia spent the next hour presenting everything she'd prepared. The technical analysis showing which safeguards were removed and why they mattered. The financial impact of Saturday's collapse versus the cost of rebuilding properly. The risk assessment if they continued with the current architecture. She expected arguments. She got them. Richard fought her on every point, backed by 2 other board members who'd been heavily invested in the modernization project. But Patricia asked smart questions, and slowly other voices joined her. By 11 o'clock, the tide had shifted. All right, Patricia said finally, I move that we approve Olivia's proposal, reinstate the legacy safeguards, restructure the technical division, and conduct a full audit of the modernization project. Seconded, someone said. Richard's face was stone. This is a mistake. Then it's our mistake to make. All in favor? 8 hands went up. 4 stayed down. Patricia nodded. Motion carries. Olivia, you have authorization to proceed. Richard, I'd like to speak with you privately after this meeting. Richard gathered his things without looking at Olivia and walked out. 2 of his allies followed. The rest of the board filtered out more slowly, some offering congratulations, others just looking exhausted. When the room was empty except for Patricia, the older woman smiled slightly. That took guts, she said. That took necessity. Olivia closed her laptop. Richard's going to make my life hell now. Probably. But you were right, and he was wrong, and sometimes that's all that matters. Patricia stood. For what it's worth, your father would have been proud. He always valued the people in the basement more than the ones in corner offices. After Patricia left, Olivia sat alone in the conference room and let herself shake for a minute. She'd just made powerful enemies. Richard Caldwell had connections throughout the industry, and he didn't forgive people who embarrassed him publicly. But she'd also just saved the company from making the same mistake twice. Her phone buzzed. Marcus. "I heard," he said when she answered. "The entire building heard. You actually got them to approve the restructure." "Barely. Still counts. What do you need from me?" "Start identifying everyone on David's team who was involved in removing the safeguards." "I want them reassigned, not fired. This wasn't entirely their fault, but they're not touching core infrastructure again." Done. "What about David himself?" "He's gone. Today. Security walks him out, standard severance package, neutral reference if anyone calls." She rubbed her temples. "And Marcus? Find out if Noah Hayes is willing to consult." "You think he'll agree?" "No, but I have to try." "Oh." She spent the rest of Monday implementing the board's decision. David Chen took the news badly, started yelling about lawsuits and wrongful termination until security escorted him out. His team was shocked but mostly cooperative once Olivia explained they'd be reassigned with no loss of pay or benefits. By evening, the entire infrastructure division had been reorganized. Now came the hard part. She'd called Noah's number 4 times Monday afternoon. He never picked up. She'd sent 2 emails that went unanswered. Tuesday morning, she tried again. This time someone answered. "Hello?" A woman's voice, older, tired. "Hi, I'm looking for Noah Hayes. This is Olivia Bennett from—" "I know who you are." The voice turned cold. "I'm his neighbor, Mrs. Chen. Noah asked me to screen his calls while he's at work. I really need to speak with him. It's about offering him his job back after you humiliated him and destroyed his career. He's not interested." "I'm not offering his job back. I'm asking if he'd be willing to consult, on his terms, for whatever rate he wants." There was a long pause. Then Mrs. Chen said, "He works at Tech World Electronics, night shift, 10 to 6. If you're serious about this, go talk to him in person. Stop hiding behind phone calls." The line went dead. Olivia looked at her watch. 4 p.m. She had 6 hours before Noah's shift started. Tech World Electronics was in a strip mall on the east side, sandwiched between a dollar store and a tax preparation office that looked permanently closed. The parking lot was half empty when Olivia pulled in at 10:15. Through the windows, she could see fluorescent lights, rows of gadgets, a bored-looking teenager at the register playing on his phone. She almost didn't go in. This was humiliating, tracking down someone who clearly didn't want to see her, showing up at his retail job like some kind of stalker. But Patricia's words kept echoing in her head. Your father valued the people in the basement more than the ones in corner offices. The store was bigger inside than it looked from outside. Aisles of phones and laptops and accessories, everything organized with the kind of precision that came from corporate merchandising mandates. Olivia wandered toward the back, past security cameras and anti-theft sensors, until she found him. Noah was restocking laptop chargers from a cart, scanning items and placing them on hooks with methodical efficiency. He wore a blue polo shirt with the Tech World logo, khaki pants, and the same exhausted expression she remembered from Saturday morning. He saw her before she could figure out what to say. His hands stopped moving. "You're stalking me now?" he asked. "I needed to talk to you. You weren't answering your phone." "Yeah, that's generally what happens when you don't want to talk to someone." He went back to restocking. "Store policy says I have to be polite to customers. So, hello, welcome to Tech World. Let me know if you need help finding anything." "Noah, we have a great selection of laptops on sale this week. Also some refurbished tablets if you're looking for budget options." I'm not here to buy anything." "Then you're loitering and I can ask you to leave." He moved his cart down the aisle. She followed. "I restructured the entire technical division," she said. "David Chen is gone. His team is reassigned. We're rebuilding the architecture with all your safeguards reinstated." "Good for you. And I want to hire you as a consultant. Whatever rate you want, whatever hours work for you. No office requirement, no meetings you don't want to attend. Just help us do this right." Noah stopped restocking. He turned to face her fully for the first time. Let me make sure I understand, he said. You fired me, humiliated me, destroyed my reputation, and forced me to take a job stocking shelves for $12 an hour. Now your company almost collapsed because you didn't listen to me, and you want me to come back and fix everything so you can feel less guilty about what you did. It's not about guilt. It's absolutely about guilt. You don't actually care about me or my expertise. You care about covering your ass and making sure what happened Saturday doesn't happen again. Because if it does, the board will realize you're not qualified to run that company. The words hit like punches. Olivia felt her face getting hot. You're right, she said quietly, about most of that. I'm trying to cover my ass. I'm trying to make sure it doesn't happen again. But I do care about your expertise. You saved thousands of jobs Saturday morning. That wasn't guilt. That was you being the only person who actually understood what needed to happen. And then I went home because I have a daughter who needs me more than your company does. I know. Mrs. Chen told me. She saw his expression change. I called your apartment. She answered. She said to come talk to you in person if I was serious. Mrs. Chen needs to mind her own business. She cares about you. That's not a bad thing. Noah leaned against his cart. He looked tired in a way that went deeper than missing sleep. The kind of tired that came from months of fighting battles he never wanted to fight in the first place. Do you know what Lily asked me yesterday? He said. She asked if we were going to be okay, if we'd have enough money for her birthday next month. Because she's 7, and she's already worrying about money because her father went from a good job to stocking shelves, and she's smart enough to know what that means. Olivia felt something crack in her chest. I told her we'd be fine, Noah continued. The dad was figuring things out, that she didn't need to worry about adult stuff. Then I went into my bedroom and looked at my bank account and realized I have about 6 weeks before I can't make rent anymore. He laughed bitterly. So yeah, he laughed. Part of me wants to take your consulting offer, the part that needs to feed his daughter and keep a roof over her head. But the other part, the part that remembers how easily you threw me away when I stopped being convenient, that part thinks you're just going to do it again. I won't. You don't know that. You're young, you're under pressure, and you have board members like Richard Caldwell whispering in your ear about efficiency and profit margins. The second I become inconvenient again, the second I push back on something that makes you uncomfortable, you'll remember that I'm just some retail worker you hired out of desperation. And I'll be right back here, scanning laptop chargers at 10 p.m. while my daughter does homework with the neighbor. Noah, I need this job, Olivia. It's terrible, and it doesn't pay enough, but it's stable. Nobody here knows who I am or what I used to do. Nobody expects anything except showing up on time and restocking shelves. And right now, that's all I can handle. He picked up his scanner and went back to work. Olivia stood there feeling useless and stupid. She thought showing up in person would mean something, that offering him work on his terms would prove she'd changed. But she hadn't changed anything that mattered. She was still the person who'd fired him, still the CEO who valued board approval more than truth, and nothing she said would erase that. I'm sorry, she said. For what it's worth, I'm really sorry. I know. Noah didn't look at her. But sorry doesn't pay rent. She left the store and sat in her car for 10 minutes, staring at the steering wheel. This was worse than the crisis Saturday morning. At least then she'd had a problem she could solve with enough money and desperation. But this, fixing what she'd broken in Noah's life, there was no solution for this. No consulting offer or apology could undo 3 months of struggling to pay bills while his daughter worried about birthdays. Her phone buzzed. Marcus again. How'd it go? He asked. He said no. Damn, what do we do now? I don't know. She started her car. Find someone else, I guess. Someone who actually wants to work with us. But driving back to her apartment, Olivia couldn't shake the image of Noah standing in that fluorescent-lit aisle, scanning laptop chargers with the resigned expression of someone who'd given up on anything better. She'd done that to him. Not the economy, not bad luck, not circumstances beyond anyone's control. Her, Olivia Bennett. The youngest CEO in Virexon's history had personally destroyed a brilliant engineer's career because she'd been too arrogant to recognize competence when it was standing right in front of her. Wednesday morning brought new problems. Clients who'd been reassured everything was stable were now reading articles about executive shakeups at Virexon. 3 major contracts were suddenly under review. The stock price dipped another 2%, and Richard Caldwell was making his move. He'd called a special board session for Friday. No agenda provided, just a terse email saying they needed to discuss leadership concerns. Patricia warned Olivia over the phone that Richard was gathering votes to have her removed as CEO. He's arguing that Saturday's crisis proves you can't handle the pressure, Patricia said. That you're making emotional decisions and destabilizing the company with unnecessary changes. The changes were completely necessary. I know that, but Richard's convincing, and some of the board members are spooked. They see the stock price dropping and the client concerns, and they're wondering if stability means keeping you or replacing you. What do you think? Patricia was quiet for a moment. I think you did the right thing, but doing the right thing doesn't always save your job. Be ready for a fight Friday. Olivia spent Wednesday and Thursday preparing her defense. Financial projections showing how the restructuring would save money long term. Testimonials from engineers who'd worked under David Chen and were relieved he was gone. Data proving the modernization project had been flawed from the start, but none of it mattered if Richard had the votes. Thursday night, she was working late in her office when her assistant knocked. Someone's here to see you, Jennifer said. No appointment. Says it's important. Tell them to schedule. It's Noah Hayes. Olivia's heart jumped. Send him in. Noah walked into her office looking uncomfortable. He was still wearing his Tech World polo, which meant he'd come straight from work. His hair was messier than usual, and he had the wired look of someone who'd been running on caffeine and bad decisions. I talked to Mrs. Chen, he said without preamble. She told me I was being an idiot. Olivia gestured to a chair. Sit, please. He sat on the edge of the seat, like he might bolt any second. She said you came to the store, that you offered consulting work and I turned you down because I was being stubborn. I wouldn't say stubborn. I would. Mrs. Chen definitely would. She said, he paused, rubbing the back of his neck. She said I was punishing you for something that was hurting me more than you, and that Lily deserves a father who knows when to accept help. Olivia waited. She knew better than to interrupt now. The thing is, Noah continued, I don't trust you. I want to be clear about that. You fired me once, you'll probably fire me again. But Mrs. Chen's right about Lily. She needs stability, and stability costs money, and I'm not going to let my pride stop me from giving her that. So you'll consult? On conditions. Real ones, not just promises. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. I wrote them down because I don't trust verbal agreements anymore. He handed her the paper. Olivia unfolded it and read. 1. Hourly rate. $200 per hour. Invoiced weekly. 2. Remote work only. No office requirement. 3. Maximum 20 hours per week. 4. All technical decisions final. No board override. 5. Contract renewable monthly. Either party can terminate with 1 week notice. 6. If terminated, 2 months severance paid immediately. These are reasonable, Olivia said. They're survival. I need enough money to build up savings so next time someone decides I'm obsolete, I have a cushion. And I need the time limit because Lily comes first. Always. If you can't work with that, say so now. I can work with it. She looked up from the paper. All of it. Even number 4? Because that's the deal breaker. If I say something's necessary and your board disagrees, I win, or I walk. Even number 4. Noah studied her face like he was trying to detect lies. Whatever he saw must have satisfied him because he nodded slowly. Okay, he said. When do you need me to start? Monday? That gives me the weekend to set everything up, get you credentials, introduce you to... I need the first week's pay up front. Olivia blinked. That's not standard. I know it's not standard, but my bank account has $53 in it, and Lily's birthday is in 3 weeks. And I'm not starting a consulting job that might disappear after 1 month without having something concrete to show for it first. Done. I'll have accounting cut a check tomorrow. Not a check. Direct deposit or cash. I don't trust checks anymore. Direct deposit. You'll have it by end of business Friday. Noah stood. He still looked uncomfortable, like he was making a deal he'd regret. One more thing. If this goes bad, if you fire me again, or decide I'm inconvenient or whatever, I want you to know I'm not going to save the company a second time. You get one rescue. That was Saturday. The next crisis is on you. Understood. Good. He headed for the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I don't hate you. I think you're arrogant and you make terrible decisions under pressure, but I don't hate you. I just don't trust you. There's a difference. After he left, Olivia sat at her desk and read through his conditions again. Everything about them screamed someone who'd been burned badly and refused to be burned twice. The weekly invoicing, the termination clause, the upfront payment, these weren't the terms of someone confident in their position. These were the terms of someone expecting the worst and preparing accordingly. She pulled up her computer and sent instructions to accounting. First week paid immediately, all conditions approved, no questions asked. Then she drafted an email to Marcus outlining Noah's role and making it clear that his technical decisions were final. Friday morning, Olivia walked into the board meeting knowing Richard had spent the week building his case against her. She had her own presentation ready, but mostly she had the certainty that came from knowing she'd done the right thing, even if it cost her everything. Richard started strong. He had slides showing stock price decline, client concerns, employee uncertainty following the restructuring. He painted a picture of a young CEO making reckless decisions based on emotion rather than strategy, destabilizing a company that needed steady leadership. The modernization project was approved by this board, Richard said. Olivia's decision to dismantle it without consultation shows a fundamental lack of respect for established governance structures. Saturday's crisis was unfortunate, but using it as an excuse to purge personnel and rebuild systems that were working fine is executive overreach. The systems weren't working fine, Olivia said quietly. They collapsed. After an unprecedented confluence of circumstances, after we removed safeguards that were specifically designed to prevent exactly that confluence. She opened her laptop. I have the technical analysis if anyone wants to review it. Every failure point Saturday morning corresponded to a removed safeguard. This wasn't bad luck. This was predictable. Patricia spoke up. Richard, you've made your concerns clear. Let Olivia present her response. Olivia walked them through everything. The restructuring plan, the engineer feedback, the long-term stability projections. She showed them Noah's original warnings about the modernization project, warnings that were documented in meeting minutes they'd all ignored. She made it clear that Saturday's crisis wasn't an anomaly. It was the natural consequence of prioritizing efficiency over resilience. I made a mistake, she concluded. I trusted the wrong people, and I fired someone who was right. I'm fixing that mistake. If you want to remove me for it, that's your decision. But the restructuring stands regardless of who's CEO. This company needs to be built on stability, not quarterly profit optimization. The room was quiet when she finished. Richard tried rallying his supporters, but the energy had shifted. The board members who'd been wavering were asking Patricia questions instead of backing Richard. The vote, when it came, wasn't close. 10-2 in favor of keeping Olivia as CEO. Richard walked out without a word. Olivia stayed in her seat feeling drained and relieved in equal measure. After the meeting, Patricia approached her. That was closer than it should have been. I know. Richard's not done. He'll be back with something else. Let him come. I'll be ready. Patricia smiled slightly. I think you will. For what it's worth, that took courage. Not many people would have admitted they were wrong as publicly as you just did. I didn't have much choice. You always have a choice. You chose honesty. Your father would have approved, right? Olivia went back to her office and found an email from accounting confirming Noah's first payment had been deposited. She forwarded it to him with a simple message. See you Monday. His response came an hour later, acknowledged, not warm, not friendly, but he'd show up, and right now that was enough. Friday evening, Olivia drove past Tech World Electronics on her way home. Through the window, she could see Noah at the register, helping a customer with something. He looked tired but focused, doing his job like it mattered even though she knew he hated every minute of it. She thought about what Mrs. Chen had said, that Noah was punishing her in ways that hurt him more. It was true. He'd turned down her first offer out of pride and stubbornness, even though he desperately needed the money. He'd only come back because a neighbor convinced him his daughter's needs mattered more than his anger. Olivia didn't know if she could fix what she'd broken, but she could try, and maybe trying was all she had right now. Monday morning, Noah's first email arrived at exactly 8 a.m. No greeting, no small talk, just a technical assessment that made Olivia's stomach drop. Initial audit complete. Found 23 critical vulnerabilities in current architecture. 11 are actively degrading. Estimate 72 hours until next potential cascade if not addressed immediately. Sending detailed breakdown now. She opened the attachment and spent 20 minutes trying to understand what she was reading. The technical language was dense, full of terms she recognized but didn't fully comprehend. What she did understand was the timeline, 3 days until another potential disaster. She called Marcus. "Tell me you're seeing Noah's email. I'm looking at it now. He's not exaggerating. These vulnerabilities are real, and some of them are worse than what caused Saturday's collapse." "How is that possible?" "We stabilized everything. We stopped the immediate bleeding, but the underlying infrastructure is still fractured. Noah's finding things David's team either missed or deliberately ignored." She heard him typing. "He's already sent preliminary fixes for 5 of them. I'm reviewing now, but Olivia, this is going to take weeks, maybe months." "We don't have months. Richard's watching everything I do, waiting for another crisis so he can push me out." "Then we work fast. I'll coordinate with Noah, get a priority list, start implementing fixes today. Keep me updated, every step." She hung up and stared at Noah's email. 23 vulnerabilities, 72 hours. She'd thought saving the company on Saturday had bought her breathing room. Instead, she'd just postponed the inevitable. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Olivia Bennett, Ishatike." "Ms. Bennett, this is Gerald Morrison from Technova Solutions." The voice was smooth, professional, the kind that came from decades of closing deals. "I'm calling regarding Noah Hayes." Olivia's hand tightened on the phone. "What about him?" "I understand you've recently engaged him as a consultant. I wanted to reach out before you invest too heavily in that relationship. I'm prepared to offer Mr. Hayes a position here at Technova, senior architect role, competitive salary, full benefits. I think it would be advantageous for everyone if we could come to an arrangement before he becomes too entangled with Virexon's current situation." "You're trying to poach my consultant to..." "I'm offering employment to a talented engineer who deserves better than consulting work. From what I understand, Mr. Hayes has had difficulty finding stable employment since leaving Virexon. Technova is prepared to provide that stability." "More bestas. How do you even know about Noah?" Morrison laughed. "The industry's smaller than you think, Ms. Bennett. Word spreads when someone saves a company from total collapse. Several firms are interested in Mr. Hayes' expertise. I'm simply being direct about our interest. Noah signed a contract with me. A month-to-month consulting agreement with a termination clause. Hardly binding. I'm sure if presented with the right offer, Mr. Hayes would see the wisdom in accepting permanent employment over precarious contract work." He paused. "Especially given his personal circumstances. A man raising a child alone needs security. Can you truly provide that?" Olivia felt her jaw clench. "This conversation is over." "Consider it a courtesy call. I'll be reaching out to Mr. Hayes directly. Have a good day." The line went dead. She sat there staring at her phone, anger and fear churning in her stomach. Morrison was right about everything. Noah's contract was barely binding. He desperately needed stable income, and Olivia couldn't guarantee Virexon would survive the next crisis. If Technova offered him real security, why wouldn't he take it? She forwarded Morrison's information to her legal team with instructions to see if there was any way to strengthen Noah's contract, knowing there probably wasn't. Then she did something she'd been avoiding. She looked up Technova Solutions. The company was huge. International presence, government contracts, the kind of resources that made Virexon look small. They could offer Noah everything she couldn't: stability, recognition, a career path that didn't depend on a struggling CEO fighting to keep her job. She should tell Noah about the call, warn him that people were circling, but she didn't. Instead, she archived Morrison's contact information and tried to focus on the 23 vulnerabilities threatening to destroy everything again. By Wednesday, Noah had fixed 11 of the critical issues. He worked entirely remotely, communicating through terse emails and occasional video calls where he walked Marcus's team through implementations. Olivia never spoke to him directly. She wasn't sure if that was his choice or hers. Wednesday afternoon, she got another call. This time from a name she recognized, Susan Park, CEO of Datafront Industries, one of Virexon's biggest competitors. Olivia, thanks for taking my call. Susan, what can I do for you? I wanted to discuss a potential opportunity. We're expanding our infrastructure division and looking for experienced leadership. Your recent handling of the crisis at Virexon has impressed several people here. We'd like to explore whether you'd be interested in bringing your expertise to Datafront. Olivia almost laughed. You're trying to recruit me? Why not? You're talented, you're young, and frankly, you're wasted fighting board politics at a company that doesn't appreciate you. Datafront offers a different culture, one where technical competence matters more than tenure. I'm not leaving Virexon, not even if Richard Caldwell succeeds in removing you, because from what I'm hearing, he's making another push, gathering support, building alliances. You survived one vote. Will you survive the next? That's not your concern. It's absolutely my concern. Talent is rare, Olivia. When I see someone capable being undermined by petty politics, I try to offer alternatives. Susan's voice softened slightly. You've proven you can recognize mistakes and fix them. That takes courage. Datafront values courage. I'm not interested. Think about it. My offer stands if circumstances change. And Olivia, if you do leave Virexon, voluntarily or otherwise, bring Noah Hayes with you. We'd be very interested in both of you. The call ended before Olivia could respond. She sat in her office feeling like walls were closing in. People were circling, trying to steal Noah, trying to recruit her, waiting for the next crisis to justify tearing everything apart. And she was stuck in the middle, trying to hold together a company that half the board wanted to rebuild without her. Her phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Richard's calling another meeting, Friday. Be ready. Of course he was. It had been exactly 1 week since the last vote. 1 week of relative stability, which for Richard meant 1 week of planning his next attack. She spent Wednesday night and Thursday morning preparing, but this time felt different. Last Friday, she'd had righteous certainty on her side. She'd made the right call restructuring the division, and she'd been willing to die on that hill. But now? Now she had 23 vulnerabilities, poaching attempts from competitors, and the nagging fear that maybe Richard was right. Maybe she wasn't qualified to run this company. Maybe being right about one thing didn't mean she could handle everything else. Thursday evening, she was still in her office when her assistant knocked. Someone's here, Jennifer said. Noah Hayes, he says it's urgent. Noah walked in looking worse than usual. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair standing up like he'd been pulling at it, and he had the manic energy of someone who'd been awake too long. We have a problem, he said without preamble. Which one? Because I'm currently dealing with about 15 Orkasan, the Frankfurt data center. I've been reviewing the logs from Saturday's collapse, and I found something. He set his laptop on her desk and pulled up screens full of code. Look at this. See these access timestamps? Someone was in the system during the cascade, not trying to fix it, actively preventing fixes. Olivia leaned closer. What are you saying? I'm saying Saturday's collapse wasn't an accident. Someone sabotaged it. The room felt suddenly colder. That's not possible. It's completely possible. Look, he pointed at lines of code that meant nothing to Olivia. These commands were entered manually during the crisis. They disabled backup protocols, blocked automatic recovery systems, even corrupted some of the emergency logs so it would be harder to trace later. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. Who had access? That's the problem. The access credentials used were David Chen's, but they were logged in from an IP address in Singapore during the collapse. David was physically in Seattle that morning. I checked the security logs. He badged into the building here at 6 a.m., 2 hours before everything went wrong. So someone stole his credentials, or he gave them to someone. Or there's a third option. Noah pulled up another screen. The modernization project created centralized admin access to make management easier. David's team had those credentials. Any one of them could have done this. Olivia felt sick. You're telling me someone on our team deliberately crashed the company? I'm telling you someone with inside access used the crisis as cover to cause maximum damage. Why? I don't know. But it wasn't random, and it wasn't accidental. This is insane. Who would? She stopped. The answer hit her like cold water. Richard, the board member? He pushed the modernization project harder than anyone, promised it would increase profits, reduce costs. Then when it failed, he tried to use that failure to remove me as CEO. What if she met Noah's eyes? What if he arranged the failure specifically to discredit me? Noah shook his head. That's a hell of an accusation with no proof. You just showed me proof. Someone sabotaged the system using credentials from David's team. David reported directly to the board. Richard had access to everything David was doing. Access isn't proof. And if you accuse a board member of sabotage without concrete evidence, he'll destroy you. He's already trying to destroy me. Friday, he's calling another meeting to push for my removal. Again. Noah closed his laptop. He looked exhausted and frustrated. Then you need to figure out what you're going to do with this information. Because if I'm right, and someone deliberately crashed the company, they're going to try again. Maybe not this week or next month, but eventually. And you need to be ready. Can you trace it further? Find out who actually entered those commands? Maybe, but it'll take time, and time's the one thing we don't have. You've got, he checked his watch, 36 hours until Friday's meeting. I can either chase this sabotage theory, or I can finish fixing the vulnerabilities that are actively threatening the system right now. Not both. Olivia wanted to say, fix the vulnerabilities, play it safe, worry about conspiracy theories later. But something in her gut said this mattered more than she understood. Chase the sabotage, she said. Marcus can handle the vulnerabilities. I need to know who did this. You sure? Because if I'm wrong, if this was just someone panicking during the crisis and making bad decisions, you're going to look paranoid, accusing people of sabotage. And if you're right, we're letting someone get away with nearly destroying the company. Noah studied her for a moment. You know this is going to make things worse, right? Richard's already trying to remove you. If you accuse him of sabotage and can't prove it, he wins. Board votes you out immediately. Then we better prove it. He left with his laptop and a promise to have something by Friday morning. Olivia sat alone in her office, feeling the weight of what they were about to do. If Noah was wrong, her career was over. If he was right but they couldn't prove it, her career was over. The only scenario where she survived was finding concrete evidence that someone had deliberately sabotaged the company, and doing it in less than 2 days. She called Marcus. I need you to pull every access log from the weekend of the crisis. Every login, every command, every keystroke anyone made across all systems. I don't care how much data it is. Pull everything. That's going to be terabytes of information. What are we looking for? Proof that someone sabotaged us deliberately. Noah found anomalies in the Frankfurt logs. I want to know if there are more. Jesus, okay. I'll get a team on it tonight. He paused. Olivia, if someone really did this, they're going to answer for it. Get me those logs. She worked through the night, reviewing everything she could access about the modernization project. David Chen's team composition, who had admin credentials, who was working when. The more she looked, the more patterns emerged. 3 members of David's team had been hired on Richard's recommendation. All 3 had extensive access to core systems, and all 3 had been in the office during the collapse. But none of them had been in the command center where everyone else was desperately trying to fix things. At 4 a.m., Marcus sent over the first batch of access logs. Olivia combed through them, looking for anything unusual. Most of it was routine, engineers trying to diagnose problems, administrators attempting emergency protocols. But there were gaps, places where the log should have shown activity but didn't, like someone had deliberately erased their tracks. By 6 a.m., she had a headache and 12 pages of notes that proved nothing concrete. Just suspicions and circumstantial evidence that would get laughed out of any serious investigation. Her phone rang. Noah. I found something, he said. He sounded wired, like he'd been up all night too. Can you get to the office? I need to show you in person. She was there in 20 minutes. Noah met her in the basement server rooms, his laptop balanced on a rack showing screens full of data. Look at this, he said. I went through every command entered during the collapse. Most were legitimate, people trying to fix things. But there's a sequence here that doesn't match. Someone entered a series of commands designed to look like emergency protocols, but they actually disabled critical safeguards. Yishis. Show me. He walked her through it. The commands were clever, hidden in legitimate-looking strings of code, easy to miss unless you knew exactly what to look for. They'd been entered over a 6-hour period, systematically dismantling the backup systems that should have prevented total collapse. Who entered them? Olivia asked. That's the interesting part. The credentials rotate. First David's admin account, then Rachel Kim's, then Thomas Werner's. All 3 accounts, all during the same time period, all from different IP addresses in different countries. So multiple people were involved? Or one person was using multiple compromised accounts to hide their tracks. But here's what matters. He pulled up another screen. All 3 of those IP addresses trace back to the same VPN service, same provider, same payment account. Someone set up a system specifically to hide who they were while they crashed the company. Can we trace the payment account? Already did. It's a shell company registered in the Caymans. No owner on record, no contact information, nothing. Professional setup. Whoever did this planned it carefully. Olivia felt cold. This wasn't David's team panicking. This was premeditated. Yeah, and there's more. Look at when these commands started. 6 hours before the actual collapse. Someone was setting this up well before anything went wrong, which means they knew something was going to trigger it. The routine maintenance in Singapore. Exactly. They knew that maintenance window was coming, and they used it as cover. Make it look like this new architecture failed naturally, when really someone had been sabotaging it systematically for hours. Can we prove who? And Noah hesitated. Not yet, but I have a theory. Whoever did this needed to know 3 things: the maintenance schedule, the admin credentials, and exactly which safeguards to disable. That's insider knowledge. Someone with deep access to both the technical systems and the operational schedule. David Chen had all of that. So did Richard Caldwell. They stared at each other. The accusation hung in the air between them, unspoken but impossible to ignore. If we're right, Olivia said slowly, if Richard arranged this to discredit me and justify removing me as CEO, then he nearly destroyed the company just to win a political fight, and he's probably going to try again. Noah closed his laptop. But we can't prove it, not without more evidence. Right now all we have is suspicious timing and technical anomalies. Any half-decent lawyer would rip this apart. What do we need? We need the payment account linked to someone specific. We need communication records showing coordination. We need something that ties Richard or David or whoever directly to the sabotage. And we have, he checked his watch, about 12 hours until your board meeting. Olivia pulled out her phone and called Patricia. It's 7 in the morning, Patricia answered, sounding groggy. This better be important. I need David Chen's employment file, complete history, references, everything. Me. Why? Because I think someone on his team deliberately sabotaged the company, and I think Richard Caldwell arranged it. There was a long silence. Then Patricia said, That's a serious accusation. I know, that's why I need proof. Can you get me David's file? I'll have it sent over within the hour. Olivia, be very careful. If you're wrong about this, I know. I'm already finished, but if I'm right, we can't let it go. She hung up and turned to Noah. What else can you do in 12 hours? I can trace the VPN traffic patterns, see if there are any identifying signatures. I can review communication logs from David's team, look for coordination. But Olivia, even if I find something, it might not be enough. Digital forensics takes time. We don't have time. I know. That's the problem. They worked through the morning. Noah disappeared into code and server logs while Olivia reviewed David Chen's employment history. It was spotless. Impressive credentials, strong recommendations, nothing that suggested someone willing to commit sabotage for hire. Then she found something. A gap. 6 months between David leaving his previous employer and joining Virexon. The resume said he'd been traveling, taking time off. But there was a reference letter from that period, dated 3 months into the gap, from Richard Caldwell himself. Richard had known David personally before recommending him for the position. She called Marcus. I need everything you can find on the relationship between Richard Caldwell and David Chen. Personal connections, business dealings, anything. That's going to take some digging. What am I looking for? Proof they knew each other before David was hired. Proof Richard planted him here deliberately. Jesus, okay, I'll see what I can find. By noon, the pieces were starting to fit together. Marcus found social media photos showing Richard and David at the same charity gala 2 years before David joined Virexon. Noah traced the VPN payment account to a law firm that had previously done work for Richard. It was all circumstantial, but the pattern was clear. Then at 2 p.m., Noah found something concrete. I've got it, he said, bursting into Olivia's office. Look at this. I went through David's work laptop, the one security confiscated when we terminated him. Someone wiped it, but they did a sloppy job. I recovered deleted emails. He showed her the screen. An email chain between David and an unnamed contact discussing the project and timeline and ensuring maximum impact. The language was vague, but one message was explicit. RC confirms Friday morning window. Proceed as planned. RC, Olivia said. Richard Caldwell. It's not definitive proof, but combined with everything else, it's enough. It has to be enough. She spent the next 3 hours preparing, building a presentation that laid out every piece of evidence, every connection, every suspicious detail. It wouldn't stand up in court, but it might be enough to convince the board that Richard had orchestrated the crisis to remove her. At 4 p.m., Patricia called. Richard just moved up the meeting. It's happening in 1 hour instead of tomorrow morning. He says it's urgent. He knows we found something. What did you find? Evidence that he sabotaged the company. I'm bringing it to the meeting. Olivia, listen to me carefully. If you accuse Richard without absolute proof, he will destroy you. Not just remove you as CEO, he'll make sure you never work in this industry again. Are you certain about this? Olivia looked at Noah's evidence spread across her desk. The access logs, the deleted emails, the connections between Richard and David. It was enough to raise serious questions, but was it enough to prove deliberate sabotage? Honestly, she wasn't sure. No, she admitted. I'm not certain, but I'm out of options. If I don't fight now, Richard wins anyway. Then fight smart. Don't lead with accusations. Present the evidence, ask questions, let the board draw their own conclusions. If you come in screaming about sabotage, they'll think you're desperate. I am desperate. I know, but don't let them see it. The board meeting started at 5 p.m. Olivia walked in with her laptop and a USB drive containing everything Noah had found. Richard was already there, sitting at the head of the table with a satisfied expression that made her stomach turn. Thank you all for coming on short notice, Richard said as everyone settled in. I know this is irregular, but recent developments require immediate attention. Over the past week, we've seen continued instability at Virexon. Client concerns, stock price volatility, internal disruption from unnecessary restructuring. I believe it's time to acknowledge that Olivia's leadership, while well-intentioned, has created more problems than it's solved. Before we go there, Olivia said, I'd like to present some findings about the crisis itself. Information that wasn't available during our last meeting. Richard's expression didn't change. I'm not sure how that's relevant. It's extremely relevant, because new evidence suggests the collapse wasn't a natural failure of the modernization project. It was deliberately caused. The room went silent. Several board members exchanged glances. That's a serious allegation, Patricia said carefully. I know, which is why I've spent the last 3 days investigating. Olivia opened her laptop and pulled up the presentation. With Noah Hayes' help, I've traced command sequences entered during the crisis. Someone with admin-level access systematically disabled safeguards, prevented recovery protocols, and covered their tracks using compromised credentials. She walked them through it, the access logs, the VPN traces, the suspicious timing. Several board members leaned forward, paying attention now. Richard's face was stone. This is interesting, he said when she paused, but it doesn't prove anything except that someone made poor decisions during a crisis. We already knew the technical team panicked. It wasn't panic. The commands were deliberate and sophisticated, and they were entered hours before the visible collapse, which means someone was preparing for this. She pulled up the next slide. Someone who knew the maintenance schedule, had access to admin credentials, and understood exactly which safeguards to disable. Someone like David Chen. Who you fired, Richard pointed out. Convenient scapegoat. Except David had help. He was hired on your recommendation, Richard. You knew him personally before he joined Verickson. In fact, you were photographed together at a charity event 2 years before he was hired. She pulled up the photo Marcus had found. That's an unusual relationship to have with someone you later recommended for a technical position. Richard's expression finally shifted, just slightly, but Olivia saw it. Surprise, maybe. Or calculation. I know many people in this industry, he said smoothly. That doesn't prove conspiracy. No, but this might. She pulled up the recovered email, deleted correspondence from David's work laptop, discussing the project and timeline and ensuring maximum impact, including a message that references someone with the initials RC confirming a Friday morning window. RC, Richard Caldwell. The room erupted. Multiple board members started talking at once. Richard stood up, his face red. This is absurd. You're manufacturing conspiracy theories to cover your own incompetence. I'm presenting evidence of sabotage. Evidence that suggests someone deliberately crashed this company to create a crisis that would justify removing me as CEO. Olivia met his eyes. If I'm wrong, let's investigate properly. Full forensic audit, outside investigators, complete transparency. But if I'm right, if you arranged this, then you nearly destroyed a company that took 40 years to build just to win a political fight. Patricia raised her hand. Everyone calm down. Richard, sit. Olivia, are you formally accusing Richard of sabotage? I'm presenting evidence and asking questions. The board can decide what it means. What I'm hearing, Patricia said slowly, is that you have suspicious patterns, but no definitive proof. Correct? Correct. And Richard, I assume you deny any involvement? Absolutely. This is a desperate attempt to deflect blame. Then we need an independent investigation. Full audit of the crisis, David Chen's employment and termination, all communication between board members and technical staff during the relevant period. If there's nothing to hide, the investigation will clear everyone. If there is something, she looked at Richard, then we need to know. The vote was close, 8-4 in favor of the investigation. Richard's face was murderous, but he didn't leave. He sat there while the board discussed investigation parameters, looking like a man planning his revenge. When the meeting ended, Patricia pulled Olivia aside. That was risky, she said quietly. I know. If the investigation doesn't find anything concrete linking Richard to sabotage, he'll have grounds to sue you personally for defamation. You understand that? I understand. Was it worth it? Olivia thought about Noah spending 3 sleepless days tracing evidence, about the company her father built almost collapsing because someone wanted her job, about all the employees who would have lost everything if Saturday's crisis hadn't been stopped. Yes, she said, it was worth it. She went back to her office and found Noah waiting, looking anxious. How'd it go? He asked. They approved an investigation, independent forensic audit, full access to everything. It'll take weeks, maybe months. And until then? Until then, Richard and I are both still here, circling each other like sharks. She collapsed into her chair. Thank you for finding all of this, for staying up all night chasing conspiracy theories I wasn't even sure were real. They're real. Whether we can prove it legally is another question, but someone definitely sabotaged that system. He picked up his laptop. I should go. Lily's got a science project due tomorrow, and I promised I'd help her build a volcano. Noah, she hesitated. Someone from Technova called me last week, trying to recruit you, offering permanent employment. His expression didn't change. I know. They called me too. Why didn't you mention it? Because I'm not interested. I've got a contract with you through the end of the month. After that, he shrugged. We'll see. But I'm not breaking an agreement just because someone waves money at me. Even if they're offering real stability, benefits, career path, everything I can't guarantee? Even then, I might not trust you, Olivia, but I keep my word. That matters to me, even when it probably shouldn't. He left before she could respond. Olivia sat in her empty office as evening turned to night, thinking about trust and worth and whether she deserved the second chance Noah was giving her. She'd accused a board member of sabotage based on evidence that might not hold up legally. She'd risked everything on a theory that could destroy her career if it turned out to be wrong. But if she hadn't fought, if she'd just accepted Richard's next attempt to remove her, she'd have spent the rest of her life knowing she gave up without trying. Sometimes fighting was all you had left, even when you knew you'd probably lose. Her phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. Investigation starts Monday. Get some rest. You're going to need it. Olivia looked at the empty office, the papers scattered across her desk, the city lights visible through her window. She thought about going home to her empty penthouse. Instead, she opened her laptop and started drafting next week's priorities. She might lose this fight. Richard might win. The investigation might clear him, and she might be forced out anyway. But until that happened, she still had a company to run, and she was going to run it right if it killed her. The investigation started Monday with 3 auditors from an independent forensics firm setting up in a conference room that quickly became off-limits to everyone except Patricia and the legal team. Olivia watched them carry in boxes of equipment and felt her stomach twist. Everything she'd built over the past 2 weeks, the restructuring, the stability, the fragile trust she was trying to rebuild, now depended on what 3 strangers found buried in server logs and email archives. Richard didn't acknowledge her in the hallways anymore. He'd walk past like she didn't exist, which somehow felt worse than open hostility. At least anger was honest. This cold dismissal was calculated, a preview of what her career would look like if the investigation cleared him. Tuesday morning brought the first real problem. One of Virexon's largest clients, a healthcare network processing millions of transactions daily, sent a formal letter requesting assurances about system stability. The letter was professional, carefully worded, but the message was clear: prove you fix things or we're moving to a competitor. Olivia called an emergency meeting with Marcus and the infrastructure team. They gathered in the command center, the same room where they'd watched everything collapse 3 weeks ago. The screen still showed system diagnostics, but now they were mostly green. Mostly. How solid are we? Olivia asked. Marcus pulled up a status board. Solid enough. Noah's fixed 18 of the original 23 vulnerabilities. The remaining 5 are low priority, shouldn't cause immediate issues. But there's always a but. But we're still running on patched legacy systems. We need a complete rebuild to be truly stable long-term. That's months of work, millions in investment, and right now we don't have the budget or the board approval for it. So we're stable until we're not. Basically, yes. Olivia looked at the screens showing green indicators that were really just temporary fixes, holding together a fractured infrastructure. She thought about the healthcare network demanding assurances she couldn't honestly give. Can Noah give us a timeline, she asked, for the full rebuild? I'll ask. But Olivia, even with Noah's help, this is bigger than one consultant. We need a dedicated team, proper resources, time to do it right. And every day we delay, the risk increases that something else breaks. She spent the afternoon drafting a proposal for the board, a comprehensive rebuild plan with cost estimates and timelines that made her wince. $3 million. 6 months of intensive work. And no guarantee Richard wouldn't tank it out of spite. Around 5 p.m., her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. Olivia Bennett. Ms. Bennett, this is Dr. Sarah Chen from Seattle Memorial Hospital. The voice was tight with stress. We're part of the healthcare network that uses your transaction processing systems. I'm calling because we're experiencing intermittent failures accessing patient records, and I was told you're the person to contact. Olivia's blood went cold. What kind of failures? Random database timeouts. We'll try to pull up a patient file and get error messages. It's happening maybe once every 20 transactions, which doesn't sound like much until you realize we're processing thousands of transactions an hour. We've had 3 situations today where doctors couldn't access critical patient history during emergencies. Are you able to access the records eventually? Usually, yes, but the delays are dangerous. We can't have physicians standing around waiting for systems to respond when someone's life is on the line. Dr. Chen paused. I need to know if this is going to get worse, because if it is, We need to start planning transition to a backup provider. Give me 2 hours. I'll have our technical team investigate and get back to you with a status update. 2 hours. After that, I'm recommending to our administration that we initiate the backup protocol. The line went dead. Olivia immediately called Marcus. We have a problem. Seattle Memorial is reporting intermittent database failures. Patient records timing out randomly. That's impossible. We've been monitoring those systems constantly. Everything's stable. Well, something's not stable. Get Noah on the line. Now see. 10 minutes later, they were on a conference call with Noah, who sounded like he'd been woken up even though it was barely evening. Intermittent database timeouts, he repeated. Affecting just Seattle Memorial or other healthcare clients too? Marcus checked. 3 other hospitals reporting similar issues. All started within the last 6 hours. Show me the error logs. They spent the next hour tracing the problem. Noah worked from home while Marcus coordinated the office team, everyone speaking in the clipped tones of professionals trying not to panic. Olivia listened, understanding maybe 1 word in 10, watching the clock count down toward Dr. Chen's deadline. Finally, Noah said, "Found it. There's a database replication issue. One of the fixes I implemented last week interacts badly with the healthcare system's security protocols. It's not causing corruption, just delays when the systems handshake. I can patch it, but what? But it's going to take 8 hours minimum. I need to write new code, test it on isolated systems, then deploy carefully across all healthcare nodes. If I rush it and break something worse, we're looking at complete outage instead of intermittent delays." Olivia looked at her watch. She had 90 minutes until Dr. Chen's deadline. "Can you give them a temporary fix? Something to reduce the timeout frequency while you work on the permanent solution?" "Maybe. Let me try something." She heard typing. "Marcus, I'm sending you a script. Run it on the healthcare cluster and see if it helps." They implemented Noah's temporary fix. The timeout frequency dropped from every 20 transactions to every 100. Better, but still not acceptable for life-critical systems. Olivia called Dr. Chen back with 15 minutes to spare. "We've identified the issue and implemented a temporary fix," she said. "You should see improvement immediately. Our team is working on a permanent solution that'll be deployed overnight." "How much improvement?" "Significant. But I'm not going to lie to you. We're still working through infrastructure issues from a recent system upgrade. If your administration needs to initiate backup protocols for safety, I understand, but I'm asking for 24 hours to prove we can stabilize this completely." Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment. 24 hours. After that, if we're still seeing problems, we're switching providers. I have to prioritize patient safety over vendor relationships. I understand completely. After she hung up, Olivia sat in her office feeling the walls close in again. 3 weeks ago, they'd barely survived a complete collapse. Now they were hemorrhaging clients because the systems holding everything together were still fragile. And somewhere in the building, 3 auditors were digging through evidence trying to determine if Richard had deliberately caused the original crisis. Her phone buzzed. A text from Noah. "Working on permanent fix now. Should have it ready by 3 a.m. Need you to approve emergency deployment protocol." She typed back. "Approved. Whatever you need." His response came immediately. "This is the 3rd emergency in 3 weeks. System can't keep running on patches and prayers. Need to talk about long-term solution." She stared at the message, knowing he was right. They were barely holding things together, and every fix created new complications. But long-term solutions required resources she didn't have, and board approval that Richard would block out of spite. "I know. Working on it," she typed back. Then, because she was tired and scared and maybe a little desperate, "Thank you. For everything." The response took longer this time. "Just doing the job. Don't make it weird." She almost laughed. Even in crisis, Noah couldn't accept gratitude without deflecting. She wondered if that was from years of being undervalued or if he'd always been that way. Around midnight, Patricia called. "The auditors found something," she said without preamble. "They want to present preliminary findings to a closed board session tomorrow afternoon. Richard's pushing for it to be open to the full board, but I'm arguing for executive committee only until we understand what they've found. Can you tell me what it is? Not over the phone, but Olivia, prepare yourself. Whatever they found, It's significant enough that they're moving faster than expected. Is that good or bad for me? I honestly don't know. Olivia didn't sleep that night. She stayed in her office monitoring the healthcare systems while Noah worked remotely on the permanent fix. Around 2 a.m. She got a notification that someone had badged into the building. She checked the security logs and saw Noah's name. She found him in the basement server rooms, running diagnostic tests on one of the main clusters. He looked like hell. Unshaven, hair a mess, wearing the same flannel shirt he'd had on during their video call earlier. I thought you were working from home, she said. I was, but I need physical access to these servers to test the fix properly. Can't risk deploying something that crashes the whole cluster. You could have waited until morning. Dr. Chen gave you 24 hours. That clock's ticking. He pointed at a screen showing test results. This fix is going to work, but it's complicated. I need to be here to monitor the deployment in case something goes wrong. Have you slept at all? Not really. He rubbed his eyes. Lily's at Mrs. Chen's. Told her I had to work late. She asked if this was going to be a regular thing, me disappearing in the middle of the night. I didn't know what to tell her. Olivia felt that familiar guilt twist in her stomach. Noah, if this is too much, it's too much. But what choice do I have? Walk away and let the healthcare systems fail? Let people die because I wanted a good night's sleep? He turned back to his keyboard. I'm not built that way. Never have been. It's probably why I ended up divorced and working retail instead of... He stopped himself. Instead of what? Nothing. Forget it. But Olivia couldn't forget it. She'd never thought about Noah's life before Virickson, before the divorce he'd mentioned once and never elaborated on. Before his wife died, she assumed that's what after losing his wife meant, though he'd never explicitly said so. The healthcare fix will be ready in about an hour, Noah said, changing the subject. I'll deploy it across all affected nodes, monitor for problems, and if everything's stable, you can tell Dr. Chen it's handled. What about the board meeting tomorrow? The auditor's preliminary findings? What about it? If they found evidence Richard sabotaged the company, you're the one who uncovered it. The board might want you there to explain the technical details. Noah shook his head. I'm a consultant, not an employee. I'm not testifying in board meetings or getting involved in company politics. I find problems, I fix problems, and I go home. That's it. Even if those politics nearly destroyed everything you built? Especially then. Because the second I step into that boardroom and start pointing fingers, I become part of the problem. I become someone with an agenda instead of someone stating facts. He met her eyes. You asked me to trace the sabotage. I did. What you do with that information is your decision, not mine. He was right, of course. This was her fight, not his. But she wished, just for a moment, that she had someone standing beside her in that boardroom instead of facing Richard's calculated hatred alone. Okay, she said quietly. Do what you need to do. I'll handle the board. She left him in the server room and went back upstairs to prepare for a meeting that could end her career. The healthcare fix deployed at 3:30 a.m. without complications. By 6 a.m., all systems were stable and the error rates had dropped to essentially zero. Olivia sent status updates to Dr. Chen and the other affected hospitals, then allowed herself 2 hours of sleep on her office couch before the board meeting. The executive committee gathered at 2 p.m. Just Patricia, Richard, 2 other senior board members, legal counsel, and the 3 auditors. Olivia walked in feeling like she was heading toward a firing squad. The lead auditor was a woman named Jennifer Torres, middle-aged and serious, the kind of person who'd spent her career finding things people wanted to stay hidden. She set up her laptop without pleasantries and launched into her presentation. We've completed preliminary analysis of the system collapse 3 weeks ago, she began. Our findings indicate deliberate sabotage by at least one individual with administrative access to core infrastructure. The sabotage was sophisticated, carefully planned, and designed to maximize damage while minimizing traceability. Richard's expression didn't change, but Olivia saw his jaw tighten slightly. Jennifer continued, We've identified 3 user accounts that entered malicious commands during the collapse. David Chen, Rachel Kim, and Thomas Werner. However, Forensic analysis shows all 3 accounts were accessed remotely via VPN from IP addresses that don't match the user's known locations during the relevant time frame. Meaning what? Patricia asked. Meaning someone compromised those accounts and used them to hide their identity. We've traced the VPN service to a payment account registered through a shell company. That company's formation documents list a law firm called Whitmore and Associates as the registered agent. She pulled up a document on the screen. Olivia felt her heart start racing. Whitmore and Associates has done extensive work for board member Richard Caldwell over the past 5 years, including setting up several investment vehicles and consulting arrangements. The shell company used to pay for the VPN service was created 8 months ago, approximately the same time the modernization project began. Richard stood up. This is circumstantial at best. I've used Whitmore and Associates for various legitimate business purposes. That doesn't connect me to sabotage. You're correct that it's circumstantial, Jennifer said calmly. However, we also recovered deleted communications from David Chen's work computer. These communications reference RC repeatedly and discuss timing, access protocols, and expected outcomes. We've also found bank records showing David Chen received 2 payments totaling $75,000 from an account controlled by one of your investment vehicles, Mr. Caldwell. The payments were made 2 weeks before and 1 week after the system collapsed. The room went completely silent. Richard's face had gone pale. Those payments were consulting fees for unrelated work. What kind of consulting work? Patricia asked quietly. Strategic planning, market analysis, standard consulting arrangements. Did you disclose these payments to the board when you recommended David Chen for employment at Virexon? I wasn't required to disclose. That's not what I asked. Patricia's voice was steel now. Did you disclose them? Richard didn't answer. Jennifer pulled up another document. We've also found email communications between Mr. Caldwell and David Chen discussing the Friday morning window and ensuring maximum board impact. These emails were sent from Mr. Caldwell's personal account, not his Virexon address, and were deleted shortly after the system collapse. We recovered them from backup servers. I want my lawyer, Richard said. That's your right, Patricia responded. But this meeting is happening with or without your participation. Jennifer, continue. The auditor spent the next hour laying out evidence that painted a damning picture. Richard had recruited David Chen specifically to sabotage the modernization project. They'd planned the collapse to coincide with routine maintenance, making it look like a technical failure rather than deliberate attack. The goal had been to create a crisis severe enough to justify removing Olivia as CEO and installing leadership more favorable to Richard's agenda. It was everything Olivia had suspected, but having it confirmed, having actual evidence, actual proof, felt surreal. When Jennifer finished, Patricia turned to Richard. Do you have anything to say? Well, this is a witch hunt based on circumstantial evidence and speculation. I've done nothing illegal. You sabotaged a company you were supposed to be governing. You nearly destroyed 40 years of work and thousands of jobs to win a political fight. Whether that's technically illegal is for prosecutors to decide, but it's absolutely grounds for immediate removal from this board. You can't? I absolutely can. I'm calling for an emergency vote to terminate Richard Caldwell's position on the board, effective immediately. All in favor? Every hand went up except Richard's. Motion carries. Richard, you're removed from the board. Legal will be in contact regarding potential civil and criminal liability. Security will escort you from the building. Richard looked around the room like he couldn't believe what was happening. Then his eyes landed on Olivia, and the hatred there was pure and absolute. This isn't over, he said quietly. You think you've won, but you've made an enemy who has resources you can't imagine. I'll destroy you, Olivia. Maybe not today, maybe not this year, but eventually. You'll wish you'd never accused me of anything. Get him out of here, Patricia said to security. They watched Richard leave, flanked by 2 security officers who'd been waiting outside. When the door closed, the room released a collective breath. Patricia looked at Olivia. You were right. I'm sorry I doubted you. I had doubts too, Olivia admitted. If Noah hadn't found that evidence, but he did. And now we need to deal with the fallout. The media is going to devour this story. Board member sabotaging his own company to stage a corporate coup. It's going to be everywhere. We need crisis communications, legal strategy, client reassurance. This is going to be messy. I know. Can you handle it? Olivia thought about the past 3 weeks. The sleepless nights, the constant crises, the feeling of drowning in problems she was barely qualified to solve. She thought about Noah working until 3 a.m. to fix systems while his daughter stayed with a neighbor. About Dr. Chen choosing to trust her for 24 hours. About Patricia asking if she could handle what came next. I don't know, she said honestly, but I'm going to try. The news broke within hours. Someone on the board, probably Patricia, leaked enough information to friendly journalists that by evening, every major tech publication was running stories about corporate sabotage at Virexon. Richard's name was everywhere, accompanied by speculation about criminal charges and SEC investigations. Olivia's phone didn't stop ringing, clients wanting reassurance, board members demanding updates, media requesting interviews. She ignored most of it and focused on what mattered: keeping systems stable, maintaining client relationships, and preventing Richard's scorched earth exit from burning down everything in its path. Around 8 p.m., she got a text from Noah. Saw the news. You okay? She stared at the message for a long moment before responding. Surviving. Barely. How's Lily? Confused why her dad keeps working late. I told her it's temporary. Hope that's true. It will be. I promise. Don't make promises you can't keep. She wanted to argue, to insist she had everything under control, but they both knew that was a lie. So instead she typed, "Thank you for believing me when I had no proof, for trusting that I wasn't making up conspiracies." The response took several minutes. I didn't trust you. I trusted the evidence. There's a difference. She smiled despite everything. Even now, even after being proven right about the sabotage, Noah couldn't let himself acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, she was worth trusting. Fair enough, she typed back. Get some sleep, you've earned it. You too. You look terrible in all those news photos. She laughed out loud at that. Leave it to Noah to puncture the drama with brutal honesty. The next 2 weeks were a controlled chaos of depositions, client meetings, and damage control. Richard hired a team of lawyers who immediately started threatening countersuits for defamation and wrongful termination. The SEC opened an investigation. Several clients switched to competitors despite Olivia's reassurances. The stock price bounced around like a drunken gambler's luck. But slowly, so slowly Olivia almost didn't notice at first, things started stabilizing. Noah completed the permanent healthcare fixes without further incidents. Dr. Chen sent a formal letter thanking Virexon for their rapid response and confirming Seattle Memorial would continue their partnership. Marcus's team made progress on the remaining system vulnerabilities. 2 new board members were appointed to replace Richard and one of his allies who resigned. 3 weeks after Richard's removal, Olivia sat in her office reviewing quarterly projections that were actually positive for the first time since she'd become CEO. The company was still fragile, still recovering, but the bleeding had stopped. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Olivia Bennett. Miss Bennett, this is Detective Sarah Morrison with the Seattle Police Department Economic Crimes Unit. I'm calling regarding Richard Caldwell and the alleged sabotage at Virexon Technologies. Olivia's stomach dropped. Has he done something? Ogong? Bakim Beshit. That's what I'm trying to determine. Mr. Caldwell's lawyers have filed a formal complaint claiming you manufactured evidence and coordinated with Noah Hayes to frame him for crimes he didn't commit. They're alleging conspiracy to commit fraud, defamation, and abuse of corporate authority. That's absurd. We have forensic evidence. Well, I've seen the forensic report. It's compelling but not conclusive. What I need from you is a complete timeline of events, all communications between you and Mr. Hayes regarding the investigation, and documentation of the decision-making process that led to accusing Mr. Caldwell of sabotage. Of course, whatever you need. Oops. I should warn you, Mr. Caldwell is wealthy, connected, and very motivated to discredit you. If there are any irregularities in how you conducted this investigation, his lawyers will find them and use them to destroy your credibility. Are you prepared for that level of scrutiny? Olivia thought about Noah's warning weeks ago. If you accuse Richard without absolute proof, He'll destroy you. Not just remove you as CEO, he'll make sure you never work in this industry again. I'm prepared, she said, because I'm telling the truth. Truth and provable facts aren't always the same thing. But okay, I'll need you to come down to the station tomorrow morning. Bring your lawyer. After she hung up, Olivia sat staring at her phone and feeling the ground shift beneath her again. She'd won the battle. Richard was gone. The company was stabilizing, but apparently the war was just beginning. She called Patricia and explained the situation. Patricia's response was immediate and grim. Richard's playing the long game. He knows the forensic evidence is strong enough that criminal charges are likely. So he's trying to flip the narrative, make you the villain, claim you orchestrated a frame-up, muddy the waters enough that prosecutors hesitate to move forward. It's a smart strategy. But what do I do? You cooperate fully, you tell the truth, and you pray that Detective Morrison is as good at her job as Richard's lawyers are at theirs. That night, Olivia worked late assembling every document, every email, every piece of evidence that showed her investigation had been conducted properly. Around 11 p.m., she realized she needed Noah's help, needed his timeline of discovery, his methodology for tracing the sabotage. Everything that would prove they hadn't manufactured evidence. She called his cell. No answer. She tried again, still nothing. Getting worried now, she called Mrs. Chen. It's Olivia Bennett from Virexon. Is Noah there? He's at the hospital, Mrs. Chen said, and Olivia's heart stopped. Lily had an accident at school today, fell off the playground equipment and hit her head. They think she has a concussion. Noah's been there all evening. Which hospital? Seattle Memorial. But Ms. Bennett, Olivia didn't hear the rest. She grabbed her keys and ran. She found Noah in the pediatric emergency department, sitting in an uncomfortable plastic chair outside a curtained exam area. He looked worse than she'd ever seen him, pale, exhausted, radiating the specific terror that came from being a parent watching your child hurt. Noah, she said softly. He looked up, and for a second she saw genuine surprise cross his face. Then it was gone, replaced by that careful, neutral expression he wore like armor. What are you doing here, he asked. Mrs. Chen told me about Lily. I came to... She realized she didn't actually know why she'd come. To help? To check on him? Because the thought of Noah sitting here alone dealing with this made something in her chest hurt? To see if you needed anything. I'm fine. You're not fine. Have they told you anything? Probable concussion. They're doing a CT scan to rule out anything worse. She's scared and confused and keeps asking why her head hurts so much. And I can't... His voice cracked slightly. He stopped, took a breath, composed himself. I can't do anything except sit here and wait. Olivia sat down in the chair next to him. You're doing what you're supposed to do. Being here. That's everything. Boss? Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, being here means I wasn't at work this afternoon when the school called. Mrs. Chen had to pick Lily up because I was in a server room fixing problems for a company that's probably going to fire me eventually anyway. And now my daughter has a concussion because I wasn't... Stop. This isn't your fault. Kids fall on playgrounds. I know that. But I'm supposed to be there when it happens. I'm supposed to be the one who gets the call, who drops everything, who... He put his head in his hands. I'm all she has. If I'm not there, you are there. You dropped everything and came. That's what matters. They sat in silence for a while. The emergency department hummed around them, monitors beeping, staff moving efficiently through curtained spaces, other families dealing with their own small tragedies. Finally, Noah said quietly, "Why did you really come here?" "Because I needed to talk to you about Richard's countersuit. And when I couldn't reach you, Mrs. Chen told me what happened, and I..." She paused. "I don't know. I just came. I didn't think about it. You should go. I appreciate the concern, but I need to focus on Lily right now, not work problems." "I'm not here about work." "Then why are you here?" She didn't have a good answer for that, because sitting in her office knowing Noah was alone in a hospital had felt wrong. Because despite everything, the firing, the distrust, the careful distance he maintained, she'd somehow started to care what happened to him. Because the past month of working together of watching him sacrifice sleep and stability to keep her company alive had shifted something she didn't know how to name? I don't know, she admitted. A doctor emerged from behind the curtain before Noah could respond. She was young, efficient, the kind of person who delivered news quickly because dawdling just prolonged everyone's anxiety. Mr. Hayes, your daughter's CT scan is clear. No bleeding, no fractures. The concussion is mild. We'll keep her for observation for a few hours, but she should be fine to go home tonight. She'll need rest for the next few days, no screen time, nothing that requires concentration. Follow up with her pediatrician next week. Noah's entire body sagged with relief. Can I see her? Of course. He stood up, then paused and looked at Olivia. Thank you for coming. You didn't have to. I know. He disappeared behind the curtain. Olivia sat in the plastic chair for another moment, listening to his voice mixing with Lily's higher pitch, the relief audible in both. Then she stood up and left before she could examine too closely why she'd come in the first place. She drove back to her apartment through empty streets, thinking about Noah sitting in that hospital chair looking terrified and exhausted, about the way his voice had cracked when he talked about not being there when Lily fell, about the impossible balance he was trying to maintain between survival and presence. And she thought about her own life, the empty penthouse, the constant work, the feeling that she was always fighting battles that never quite ended. She'd won against Richard, but now he was counterattacking. She'd stabilized the company, but it was still fragile. She'd brought Noah back, but he still didn't trust her. Everything felt temporary, precarious, like she was building castles out of cards that could collapse with the wrong breath. Her phone buzzed with the text from Noah. Home with Lily. She's okay. Thank you again for coming. Means more than I admitted in person. She stared at that message for a long time. Means more than I admitted in person. It was the closest thing to vulnerability Noah had shown her since the day she'd fired him. I'm glad she's okay, she typed back. Take the rest of the week off. Family comes first. Can't afford to. Richard's lawyers are circling and you need documentation of the sabotage investigation. I'll have everything ready for Detective Morrison by tomorrow. Noah, I keep my commitments. Even when they're inconvenient, it's both my best and worst quality. She wanted to argue, to tell him he didn't owe her anything, that his daughter's recovery mattered more than her legal problems. But she knew he wouldn't listen. Noah Hayes kept his word, even when it hurt him, even when people didn't deserve it. It was both his best and worst quality. And somewhere in the past month, Olivia had stopped deserving it and started trying to earn it instead. Noah delivered the documentation Thursday morning, 2 days after Lily's accident. He showed up at Olivia's office looking like he'd slept maybe 3 hours total, carrying a USB drive and a stack of printed reports that laid out every step of their sabotage investigation in meticulous detail. This is everything Detective Morrison will need, he said, setting the materials on her desk. Timeline of discovery, methodology, unaltered server logs, chain of custody documentation. If Richard's lawyers try to claim we manufactured evidence, this proves otherwise. How's Lily? Cranky about the no screen time rule, otherwise okay. Mrs. Chen's watching her today. He rubbed his eyes. I need to get back. Just wanted to make sure you had this before your meeting. Noah, wait! Olivia stood up. I've been thinking about your contract, the month-to-month arrangement. It's not fair to you, the instability, the uncertainty. I want to offer you something permanent. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Permanent like the permanent position I had before you fired me? That's fair. I deserve that. But I'm serious. Director of Infrastructure, full executive position, real authority over technical decisions. Salary, benefits, stock options. Everything you should have had from the beginning. I don't want an executive position. Then consultant on permanent retainer. Whatever structure works for you, She paused, trying to find words that wouldn't sound desperate or manipulative. I don't want you worrying every month whether you'll still have income. You've more than proven your value. My value. Noah said the words like they tasted bitter. 3 months ago, I had no value. I was obsolete, remember? Afraid of change. Holding the company back. Now suddenly I'm valuable again because you need something from me. That's not value, Olivia. That's convenience. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. You valued me when I saved the company. You'll value me as long as I'm useful. But the second I become inconvenient again, The second I disagree with something important or push back on the wrong decision, we both know how this ends. I wouldn't. You already did. Once was enough. He picked up his keys. Keep the month-to-month arrangement. At least then we're both honest about what this is. He left before she could argue. Olivia sat at her desk, staring at the documentation Noah had prepared. Hundreds of hours of work distilled into reports that would protect her from Richard's lawyers. Work he'd done while his daughter recovered from a concussion, while maintaining his retail job, while surviving on a few hours of sleep each night. She'd asked him what he wanted. He told her clearly, honesty about what their relationship was. And what it was, apparently, was a business transaction between two people who didn't trust each other, held together by need rather than respect. The meeting with Detective Morrison went better than expected. The detective reviewed Noah's documentation thoroughly, asked pointed questions about timeline and methodology, and seemed satisfied that the investigation had been conducted properly. Richard's lawyers were present via video call, trying to poke holes in the evidence, but Morrison shut them down efficiently. Based on what I've seen, Morrison concluded, there's sufficient evidence to recommend criminal charges against Mr. Caldwell for corporate sabotage and conspiracy to commit fraud. The DA will make the final decision, but my recommendation will be to prosecute. Richard's lead attorney, a sharp-dressed man named Mitchell, who probably cost more per hour than Noah made in a week, leaned forward on the screen. This is a rush to judgment based on circumstantial evidence assembled by parties with clear bias against my client. Your client paid someone $75,000 to crash a company he was supposed to be governing. Morrison interrupted. That's not circumstantial. That's documented financial transactions supporting forensic evidence of deliberate sabotage. Save the speech for a jury. After the meeting, Olivia walked out of the police station feeling simultaneously relieved and exhausted. Richard would face charges. Her investigation would be vindicated. The company was safe from his interference. But none of that solved the larger problem. Virickson was still fragile, still running on patched systems held together by Noah's expertise, and an infrastructure team stretched too thin. They needed the full rebuild, but the board still hadn't approved the budget. Friday afternoon, she called an emergency board meeting to present the rebuild proposal again. Patricia had helped her refine the numbers, but it was still an enormous ask, $3 million and 6 months of intensive work, all to rebuild systems that were currently functioning well enough that most people didn't see the urgency. The system works right now, one of the new board members pointed out. Why spend millions fixing something that isn't broken? Because it is broken, Olivia said. We're running on temporary fixes and legacy architecture that's held together with digital duct tape. Every day we delay increases the risk of another catastrophic failure. You said Noah Hayes fixed the vulnerabilities. He fixed the immediate threats, but the underlying infrastructure is still fundamentally compromised. We need a complete rebuild to be truly stable long-term. The board debated for 2 hours. Some members saw the necessity, others worried about the cost, the timeline, the risk of disrupting currently stable systems. Finally, Patricia called for a vote. It failed. 7-5 against the rebuild. Olivia walked out of that meeting feeling defeated in a way she hadn't felt even during the worst of the crisis. She'd fought so hard, survived Richard's sabotage, proved the conspiracy, maintained client relationships, kept the company afloat, and now the board was refusing to approve the one thing that would actually ensure long-term stability. She called Marcus. The rebuild was voted down. Damn, what do we do? I don't know. Keep patching things as they break, I guess. Hope nothing catastrophic happens before we can convince them otherwise. That's not a strategy. That's just crossing our fingers and praying. Yeah, I know. She stayed late Friday night, sitting in her empty office and wondering how much longer she could keep fighting. Every victory felt temporary. Every solution created new problems. She was tired in a way that sleep didn't fix. Around 9 p.m., her phone rang. Noah. I heard about the board vote, he said. News travels fast. Marcus called me, asked if there was any way to make the current systems more stable without a full rebuild. I told him the truth. No. We're buying time, not solving problems. I know. Olivia, I can't keep doing this. The emergency calls at 3 a.m. The constant crisis management, the knowledge that everything could collapse again at any moment. I've got a 7-year-old daughter who needs stability, And I can't provide that when I'm constantly putting out fires for a company that won't invest in permanent solutions. She felt something cold settle in her stomach. Are you quitting? I'm thinking about it. Technova's offer is still open. They're promising permanent employment, normal hours, systems that are actually maintained properly. Everything I can't get at Virexon. Noah, please, don't. Don't beg. Don't make promises you can't keep. We both know the board runs this company, not you. And if they won't approve the rebuild, nothing changes. I'm just going to keep sacrificing my daughter's childhood to patch systems that should have been replaced months ago. What if I could get the budget approved? What if I found another way? There is no other way. You tried. You lost the vote. It's over. He was quiet for a moment. I'll finish out the month like my contract specifies. After that, I'm taking Technova's offer. The line went dead. Olivia sat staring at her phone, feeling everything crumble. Without Noah, the infrastructure would collapse within weeks. Without the rebuild, they couldn't retain any qualified replacement. Without board support, she couldn't solve either problem. She'd saved the company from Richard only to watch it slowly bleed out from willful neglect. Saturday morning, she did something she'd been avoiding for months. She called her father. He'd retired 3 years ago, right before Olivia took over as CEO. Moved to a cabin in Montana where he spent his days fishing and pretending corporate politics didn't exist. They'd barely spoken since she'd taken the job. She'd been too proud to ask for help, too determined to prove she could handle everything alone. Olivia, he said when he answered, surprise evident in his voice. This is unexpected. Hi, Dad. I need advice. She told him everything. The crisis, Richard's sabotage, the investigation, Noah, the rebuild proposal that failed. She talked for 20 minutes while he listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "You know what your problem is? That I'm trying to run a company the board won't let me fix? That you're trying to run a company the way you think you're supposed to instead of the way that actually works. You're so busy fighting battles and proving yourself that you've forgotten what leadership actually means." I don't understand. Leadership isn't about winning board votes or managing crises. It's about recognizing what matters and protecting it, even when it costs you something. Especially when it costs you something. He paused. You've got an engineer who's sacrificing everything to keep your company alive. A man who works 3 a.m. emergencies while his daughter recovers from injuries, who maintains systems nobody else understands, who came back after you fired him because it was the right thing to do. And you're letting him walk away because you lost a budget vote. The board controls the money. The board controls the money you asked for. But there are other options, creative options, options that don't require board approval if you're willing to take the risk. Like what? Like using your own capital, your salary, your bonuses, your stock options. You're sitting on a couple million in personal assets, aren't you? Fund the rebuild yourself. Olivia felt her stomach drop. That's insane. If it fails, I lose everything. And if you don't do it, you lose everything anyway. The company collapses, Noah leaves, your career is finished. At least this way you're failing on your own terms, betting on something you believe in instead of waiting for other people to save you. That's not how corporate governance works. Screw corporate governance. You're the CEO. Find a way. He laughed, but it was gentle. You know what I remember about building this company? The moments I broke the rules. The times I invested my own money when investors said no. The decisions that should have destroyed me but somehow worked because I cared more about the outcome than the risk. That's not recklessness, kiddo. That's conviction. After they hung up, Olivia sat in her apartment and did something she hadn't done in months. She actually calculated her personal finances. Salary, bonuses, stock options, the inheritance from her mother. Her father was right. She had about $2 million in liquid assets, maybe $3 million if she sold some investments. It was enough to fund the rebuild. Barely. If she paid Noah's team directly, hired contractors on her own authority, and bypassed the board entirely, she could make it happen. She'd be betting everything on a project that might fail. If the rebuild didn't work, she'd be broke and unemployed. If the board found out and disapproved, She'd probably face legal action for unauthorized spending. If anything went wrong, she'd have no one to blame and nowhere to hide. But Noah would stay, the company would stabilize. And maybe, just maybe, she'd finally do something that proved she deserved the title her father had given her. Monday morning, she called Noah before he could submit his resignation. "Don't take the Technova offer," she said. "Not yet. Give me 1 week. Olivia, 1 week. I'm going to fix this." "How?" "The board already—" "Let me worry about the board. Just give me 1 week before you make any final decisions." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, 1 week, but that's it. What do you mean? She spent Monday and Tuesday liquidating investments, transferring funds, setting up the financial infrastructure to fund the rebuild privately. Wednesday morning, she called Marcus into her office and told him the plan. "You're going to bankrupt yourself," he said. "Probably, but I'm going to do it anyway." She handed him a project plan. "I need you to coordinate the rebuild, hire contractors, order equipment, manage timelines. Everything you need is in this document. The funding will come from accounts I control personally. The board is going to lose their minds when they find out. Let them. By the time they notice, we'll be too far along to stop. They can fire me afterward if they want, but the rebuild will be finished. This is crazy. This is necessary. Are you in or not?" Marcus looked at the project plan, then at Olivia. "You're really betting everything on this?" "Everything I have, which means it has to work." "Okay, I'm in." They moved fast. Marcus started hiring contractors that afternoon. By Thursday, they had teams mobilizing. By Friday, the first phase of the rebuild was underway, happening in isolated segments that wouldn't disrupt current operations. Olivia waited until Friday evening to tell Noah. She called him and said simply, "The rebuild is happening. Fully funded, already in progress. If you want to stay and see it through, the position is yours. Executive role, permanent employment, everything we discussed. If you want to leave anyway, I understand, but I wanted you to know. I found another way." "How?" "The board voted it down." "I'm funding it personally, my own money, my own risk. The board doesn't control what I do with my personal assets. That's insane. If this fails, I'm broke and unemployed. But if it works, the company is stable for the first time since I became CEO. That's worth the risk." Noah was silent for so long she thought he'd hung up. Then he said quietly, "Why would you do that?" "Because you were right about everything. I valued you when you were convenient and discarded you when you weren't. I let board politics matter more than truth. I treated competence like it was negotiable instead of essential." She paused. "And because you've sacrificed everything to keep this company alive, the least I can do is match that commitment." "This doesn't fix what happened before. I know. But maybe it's a start." Another long silence. Then, "I'll stay. But not because of the money or the title. I'll stay because for the first time since I met you, you're acting like you actually believe in something more than your own career. I'll take that. And Olivia, don't make me regret this." "I won't. I promise." After she hung up, Olivia sat in her office and let herself feel the weight of what she'd just committed to. $2 million of her own money, betting on a project that might fail, trusting an engineer who didn't trust her. It was terrifying. It was also the most certain she'd felt in months. The rebuild took 4 months instead of 6. Noah worked with contractors to accelerate timelines, implementing clever solutions that reduced costs without compromising quality. Marcus coordinated everything with a precision that made Olivia grateful she'd never doubted his competence. The board eventually noticed, of course. 3 months in, Patricia called Olivia into a private meeting. "You've been running an unauthorized infrastructure project using personal funds," Patricia said. It wasn't a question. "Yes. That's highly irregular, possibly grounds for removal." "I know." "Why did you do it?" "Because it was necessary, and the board wasn't going to approve it, and I'd rather bet on something I believe in than watch the company slowly collapse from neglect." Patricia studied her for a long moment. Then she smiled slightly. "Your father did the same thing twice, once in '97 during the expansion crisis, once in 2004 when investors wanted to sell. Both times people said he was crazy. Both times he was right." She leaned back. I'm not going to report this to the board. She leaned back. But if the rebuild fails, I can't protect you. I understand. Good. Now get back to work. The rebuild completed in early December, 2 weeks before Christmas. The final integration happened overnight, with Noah and his team working through until dawn to ensure every system transitioned smoothly. Olivia stayed in the office with them, not because she could help technically, but because it felt wrong to be anywhere else. At 6 a.m., Noah ran the final diagnostics. Every system showed green, every connection stable, every safeguard operational. We're done, he said. He sounded almost surprised. It actually worked. Marcus started laughing, the kind of exhausted relief that came after months of impossible pressure. Other engineers joined in. Someone opened champagne that appeared from nowhere. For a few minutes, the command center filled with celebration. Then, everyone went home to sleep. Olivia stayed in the office, looking at the screens showing systems that were finally, genuinely stable. She'd bet everything on this. If it had failed, she'd have lost her job, her savings, her credibility. But it hadn't failed. Against every reasonable expectation, it had worked. Her phone buzzed. A text from Noah. Lily wants to know if you'd like to come to her birthday party this weekend. She says you helped her dad when things were hard. I didn't correct her since I don't know how to explain corporate politics to a 7-year-old. Olivia felt something unexpected, something that felt almost like hope. I'd love to come, she typed back. What does she want for her birthday? Dinosaur books and art supplies. But honestly, just showing up would mean a lot. She's been asking about you. Saturday afternoon, Olivia drove to Noah's apartment building with wrapped dinosaur books and a professional art set that probably cost more than was appropriate for a 7-year-old's birthday. She almost turned around 3 times, suddenly uncertain whether she belonged at this small gathering in Noah's cramped apartment. But she didn't turn around. She parked and went inside and knocked on the door. And when Lily answered wearing a dinosaur crown and a huge smile, something in Olivia's chest loosened. You came, Lily said. Dad said you were really busy, but you'd try. I wouldn't miss it. The party was small. Lily, Noah, Mrs. Chen from next door, a couple of kids from Lily's class with their parents. The apartment was decorated with handmade dinosaur cutouts and a banner that said, Happy 8th Birthday, in crayon lettering. It was nothing like Olivia's childhood parties with their professional planners and catered food. It was better. She watched Noah make dinosaur-shaped pancakes while kids ran around playing, watched him crouch down to Lily's level to listen seriously when she explained her newest dinosaur obsession, watched him be fully present in a way Olivia was only now learning to recognize. Later, after cake and presents, while kids played in the living room and adults cleaned up in the kitchen, Noah approached her. Thank you for coming, he said. Lily was excited all week. Thank you for inviting me. She gestured at the chaos around them. This is really nice. It's loud and chaotic and probably giving you a headache. It's perfect. And she meant it. Noah studied her face like he was trying to solve a puzzle. You've changed since all this started. I don't know if you've noticed, but you're different. Different how? Less certain about everything, more willing to admit when you don't know something, less concerned with looking like you have it all figured out. He paused. I think I prefer this version. Even though she's messier? Especially because she's messier. Turns out perfection is overrated. Mrs. Chen appeared with more plates to wash, and the moment ended. But it stayed with Olivia through the rest of the party and into the evening. That observation from someone who'd once had every reason to hate her. I think I prefer this version. The legal proceedings against Richard took 8 months. The prosecution built a solid case combining the forensic evidence with financial records and recovered communications. Richard's lawyers fought every step, but the evidence was too clear. In August, Richard pleaded guilty to corporate sabotage and conspiracy to commit fraud. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison and ordered to pay $7 million in restitution to Virexon. It was a fraction of what he'd cost the company, but it was something. Olivia wasn't in the courtroom when the sentence was read. She'd moved past Richard by then, past the anger and the vindication. He'd lost everything trying to take something from her, and that felt like enough punishment without her needing to witness it. By September, Virexon had recovered almost completely. Client relationships stabilized. The stock price climbed to pre-crisis levels. The rebuilt infrastructure hummed along without drama, doing exactly what it was supposed to, working invisibly, reliably, boringly. Olivia promoted Marcus to COO and gave him authority over most daily operations. She promoted Noah to Executive Director of Infrastructure with a team of 15 engineers reporting to him. She restructured the board to include more technical voices and fewer investment bankers, and she started going home at reasonable hours. It took her a while to figure out what to do with time that wasn't consumed by crisis management. She'd spent so long defining herself by work that having space for anything else felt strange. But she learned, slowly, imperfectly. One evening in October, she found herself sitting in a coffee shop near Noah's apartment, working on her laptop without any particular urgency. Noah appeared around 7, having just dropped Lily at a friend's house for a sleepover. "Stalking me again?" he asked, but he was smiling. "Just in the neighborhood. Your office is 12 miles from here." "Okay, fine, I was hoping to run into you." She closed her laptop. "Do you have dinner plans?" "Are you asking me out?" "I'm asking if you want to get dinner. Interpret that however you want." He sat down across from her. "Ross, this is going to make work complicated." "Probably, but work's always complicated. At least this way it might also be interesting." "I don't trust you," he said. "Not meanly, just honestly." "I know, but you trust me more than you did 6 months ago, right? Maybe marginally. Then maybe 6 months from now, you'll trust me a little more. And 6 months after that, even more. I'm patient. I can wait." Noah laughed. "You're really bad at this. You know that, right? The whole romantic interest thing. You're making it sound like a business proposal. Would you prefer I be less direct?" "No. I prefer you exactly like this. Messy and honest and completely failing at being smooth." He stood up. "Come on. There's a Thai place 3 blocks from here that Lily loves. We can get dinner, and you can tell me more about this multi-year plan to gradually earn my trust." They walked through October evening streets while Noah pointed out places Lily liked. The bookstore where she spent her allowance, the park where she'd learned to ride a bike, the ice cream shop that had a dinosaur painted on the window. He talked about his daughter with the unselfconscious pride of someone who'd built his entire life around another person's happiness. Olivia listened and thought about all the things she'd sacrificed for career advancement, the relationships she'd neglected, the experiences she'd missed, the years she'd spent climbing ladders that led to empty offices and insomnia. She'd achieved everything she thought she wanted and discovered it wasn't enough. Success without connection was just isolation with better furniture. But maybe, if she kept showing up, kept being honest, kept choosing presence over performance, maybe she could build something different, something that felt less like achievement and more like actual living. "You're quiet," Noah said. "Just thinking." About? About how 6 months ago, I thought saving the company was the most important thing I could do, and now I'm not sure saving it mattered as much as how I saved it, or who I became in the process. That's it, Tool. Noah was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I think that's the first genuinely wise thing I've heard you say." "Thanks, I think. It's a compliment. Wisdom isn't about having answers. It's about asking better questions." They reached the Thai restaurant, a small place with mismatched chairs and walls covered in string lights. Noah ordered half the menu. Apparently he'd been coming here for years and knew exactly what was good. They talked about nothing important while waiting for food, and Olivia realized this was the first time in her entire adult life she'd had dinner with someone without checking her phone every 5 minutes. The food arrived, they ate. They talked about Lily's latest obsession with paleontology and whether velociraptors were actually feathered. They talked about Marcus's upcoming vacation and whether the infrastructure team could survive without Noah for a week. They talked about everything except work, except trust, except the complicated history between them. And somewhere in that ordinary conversation over pad thai and spring rolls, Olivia understood something she'd been too busy to recognize before. This was what mattered, not the board meetings or stock prices or headlines about corporate sabotage. This, sitting across from someone who'd seen her at her worst and was willing to believe she could be better, building something real out of failure and honesty, and the willingness to keep showing up even when trust didn't come easy. "What?" Noah asked, noticing her expression. "Nothing. Just thank you for giving me another chance. You didn't have to. You made it hard to say no. You made it hard to betting your entire life savings on a rebuild to prove you meant what you said. That was either incredibly stupid or incredibly brave. I'm still not sure which. Can it be both? Yeah, I think maybe it can. They finished dinner and walked back toward where Olivia had parked. The evening had turned cold, autumn giving way to the first hints of winter. Noah walked with his hands in his pockets, comfortable with silence in a way Olivia was still learning. I should go, she said when they reached her car. Let you get back to whatever you do on Saturday nights when Lily's having sleepovers. I usually work on projects around the apartment, exciting stuff. You're welcome to come help if you want to learn how to fix a leaky faucet. She almost said yes, almost followed him back to his apartment to spend the evening doing ordinary domestic tasks that had nothing to do with corporate leadership or crisis management. But she stopped herself. Rain check, she said. I'm still learning how to not rush things. That's probably wise. See? Asking better questions. She drove home through city streets thinking about faucets and trust and the difference between wanting something and being ready for it. She'd wanted Noah's respect for months, wanted to prove she deserved his expertise and his time. But she was only now beginning to understand what actually earning those things required. Not grand gestures or dramatic sacrifices, but consistent presence. Showing up. Being honest. Letting him see her fail and trying anyway. It wasn't the kind of success she'd been taught to pursue. There were no promotions or headlines or corner offices at the end of this road. Just the possibility of building something real with another equally imperfect person who'd learned the same hard lessons about what mattered. 6 months later, in early April, Olivia stood in front of the board presenting annual results. Revenue was up 18%. Client satisfaction scores were the highest they'd been in 5 years. System stability metrics exceeded every target. The infrastructure rebuild had proven itself dozens of times over. I need to make a disclosure, she said when the presentation finished. Last year I funded the infrastructure rebuild using personal assets without board authorization. That was highly irregular, and I understand if there are consequences for that decision. But I don't regret it. It was necessary, and it worked, and I'd make the same choice again. The room was quiet. Then Patricia said, "We've known about the unauthorized funding for months. We chose not to address it because results spoke louder than protocols. Consider this your formal reprimand for terrible corporate governance and excellent leadership judgment." That's it? That's it. Don't do it again. But also, Patricia smiled slightly. Thank you for caring enough about this company to risk everything for it. Your father would have been proud. After the meeting, Olivia went down to the basement server rooms where Noah was reviewing system upgrades with his team. He saw her and excused himself from the discussion. How'd it go? He asked. Better than expected. They officially reprimanded me for the unauthorized funding and then thanked me for doing it anyway. Sounds about right. He pulled up a diagnostic on his tablet. I wanted to show you something. See these metrics? System efficiency, response times, error rates. All exactly where they should be. Boring, stable, perfect. That's what we wanted. Yeah, but it also means my job is about to get a lot less dramatic. No more 3 a.m. emergency calls. No more catastrophic failures. Just routine maintenance and occasional upgrades. Normal work for normal people. Is that a bad thing? Maurice Charcy Corporation deeds. No, it's the best possible thing. It means we finally built something that works. He put away his tablet. It also means I have time for things that aren't work. Like teaching Lily to swim. Like having actual weekends. Like maybe going on dates with workaholics who are slowly learning to leave the office before midnight. That sounds nice. Yeah, it does. He looked at her for a moment, and Olivia saw something shift in his expression. Not trust, not quite yet, but maybe the beginning of trust. The willingness to believe that some things could be different than they'd been before. My lease is up next month, he said. I'm looking at bigger apartments, places where Lily can have her own room instead of sharing with boxes of my old equipment. Want to help me look? It was such a small thing, such an ordinary domestic request. But Olivia understood what he was really asking. Did she want to be part of his life in ways that extended beyond professional obligations? Did she want to see where he might live, meet the parts of his world she'd only glimpsed at birthday parties? I'd love to, she said. They looked at apartments the following weekend. Noah had a list of requirements: near Lily's school, quiet neighborhood, washer dryer and unit, and rejected places that Olivia thought were perfectly nice for reasons she didn't understand. Too much traffic noise, wrong kind of lighting, carpet that reminded him of a bad apartment he'd lived in years ago. "You're very particular," she said after the fifth rejection. "I'm going to live there. It needs to feel right." They found the right place in a neighborhood Olivia had never visited. Older building, tree-lined street, park visible from the living room windows. Noah walked through it twice, checking things she wouldn't have thought to check. Water pressure, window seals, whether the kitchen had enough outlets. "This one," he said finally. "This is it." "You're sure?" "Completely sure." He looked at her. "Want to see Lily's room?" "Hey." She followed him to a bedroom with afternoon light streaming through windows that overlooked the park. She could picture it. Dinosaur posters on the walls, books scattered across shelves, a 7-year-old becoming 8, becoming 10, becoming whatever came next. "She'll love it," Olivia said. "Yeah, I think she will." Noah leaned against the door frame. "I'm telling you this because I'm tired of not being honest about things. I don't trust easily. Probably never will. You hurt me once, and that doesn't just disappear because you apologized or proved yourself. But I'm willing to try. I'm willing to see if we can build something real. And I wanted you to know that before—" He gestured vaguely at the space between them. "Before whatever this becomes, you should know what you're signing up for. Shit. Someone who's been hurt and is trying anyway? Someone who's going to be difficult and suspicious and probably unfair sometimes because old wounds don't heal cleanly. I can work with that," Olivia said. "As long as you can work with someone who's going to be overly focused on achievement and probably neglect everything else, because that's how she was trained to survive." "Oh, that sounds terrible." "Yeah, probably." "Okay." Noah smiled. "Let's try it anyway." They signed the lease the following week. Noah moved in over Memorial Day weekend, and Olivia helped carry boxes up 3 flights of stairs while Lily directed where everything should go with the absolute certainty of someone who knew exactly how her room should be organized. Later, after boxes were unpacked and furniture was assembled, and Lily was asleep in her new bedroom, Noah and Olivia sat on his balcony watching the park across the street fill with evening shadows. "Thank you," Noah said quietly. "For all of it. The job, the rebuild, the second chance. I know I'm terrible at accepting gratitude, but I need you to know what you did mattered. Not just for the company, for me, for Lily. You saved the company twice. I just finally matched your commitment. It's more than that. You changed, really changed. I've watched you go from someone who valued image over truth to someone who's trying to actually be the person she claims to be. That's rare. Most people just get better at hiding their flaws." Olivia thought about the person she'd been a year ago. The CEO who fired people without really seeing them, who valued board approval more than competence, who thought success was measured in corner offices and stock prices rather than in moments like this, sitting on a balcony with someone who'd seen her at her worst and believed she could be better. "I think I spent my whole life chasing the wrong things," she said, "trying to prove I deserve space in rooms full of people who didn't respect me, achieving things that looked impressive but felt empty. It took nearly losing everything to realize that none of it mattered as much as this." "As what?" "As being present, as building things that last, as choosing truth over convenience even when it costs everything." She looked at him. "As finding people worth keeping and actually doing the work to keep them." Noah reached over and took her hand. It was the first time he'd initiated physical contact beyond professional handshakes, and something about the gesture made Olivia's throat tight. "I'm glad you figured that out," he said, "even if it took a corporate sabotage conspiracy and almost bankrupting yourself to get there." "Yeah, me too." They sat in comfortable silence while the park emptied and city lights flickered on across the neighborhood. Inside the apartment, Olivia could hear Lily's white noise machine humming. Normal sounds in a normal apartment building in a normal neighborhood where normal people built normal lives. It was everything she'd never wanted and everything she needed. 3 months later, Olivia gave a keynote address at a tech leadership conference. She'd been invited to speak about crisis management and corporate governance, to share lessons from Virexon's dramatic year. She'd drafted a professional talk about decision-making under pressure and the importance of technical expertise. Then she threw out the draft and wrote something honest instead. "A year ago," she told the audience, "I was the youngest CEO in my company's history, and I was failing at everything that mattered. I fired brilliant people because they made me uncomfortable. I trusted credentials over competence. I made decisions based on what looked good rather than what was right. And I nearly destroyed a 40-year-old company because I was too arrogant to admit I didn't know everything. She walked them through it, the crisis, the sabotage, the investigation. But more than that, she talked about Noah, about a single father working retail because she'd destroyed his career, about the humiliation of begging for help from someone she'd humiliated, about learning the difference between being impressive and being trustworthy. I'm standing here today not because I did everything right, she concluded. I'm here because I finally learned to admit when I was wrong, because I found people who cared more about truth than politics, and I chose to trust them even when it cost me everything. Because I stopped measuring success by titles and started measuring it by whether I could look at myself honestly. She paused, looking out at an audience of ambitious professionals who probably saw themselves in the person she'd been a year ago. Here's what nobody tells you about leadership, she said. It's not about being the smartest person in the room or making perfect decisions or never showing weakness. It's about recognizing value even when it doesn't look like you expected. It's about admitting mistakes quickly instead of defending them stubbornly. It's about building systems and relationships that can survive your own inevitable failures. And most importantly, it's about understanding that some things matter more than career advancement, more than corner offices, more than proving you belong in rooms full of people who don't respect you. She smiled. Turns out the real measure of success isn't what you achieve, it's who you become while achieving it. And whether you can look at that person honestly and not feel ashamed. After the keynote, dozens of people approached her with questions and comments, but the one that stuck with her came from a young woman who looked barely out of college. How do you know? The woman asked. How do you know when you're chasing the wrong things? Olivia thought about it. When success feels lonely, she said finally. When victories feel hollow. When you're constantly fighting but never building. Those are signs you're measuring the wrong things. And if you've already spent years doing that, then you stop. You admit you were wrong. And you start building something different. It's never too late to change direction. It's only too late if you keep pretending the direction you're going is the one you actually want. That evening, Olivia drove straight from the conference to Noah's apartment. She let herself in with the key he'd given her 3 months earlier. A small gesture that had felt enormous at the time, that physical representation of trust slowly rebuilding. She found him and Lily at the kitchen table working on a school project about prehistoric marine reptiles. Lily was carefully coloring a mosasaur while Noah read facts from a library book. They had teeth like sharks, Lily informed Olivia seriously, and they could grow up to 50 feet long. That's terrifying. That's awesome. Dad says we might go to the Natural History Museum this weekend to see the fossil exhibit. That sounds fun. Noah looked up from the book. How was the conference? Good, strange. I gave a talk that was probably too honest. That's the best kind. Lily finished coloring her mosasaur and held it up proudly. What do you think? I think it's perfect, Olivia said. And she meant it, not because the coloring was technically perfect, but because it was made with care by a kid who loved dinosaurs, in an apartment that felt like home, while her father sat nearby reading facts about prehistoric oceans. This was what mattered, not keynote addresses or professional accolades or proving herself to strangers. This, being present in ordinary moments with people who'd chosen to let her into their lives, despite having every reason not to. Later, after Lily went to bed, Noah and Olivia sat on his couch, not really watching a movie neither of them cared about. You know what I realized today? Olivia said. A year ago, I would have called this boring. Sitting around watching movies on a Tuesday night. No drama, no crisis, no urgent problems to solve. I would have thought this meant I wasn't ambitious enough. And now? Now I think this is what I was ambitious for. I just didn't know it yet. She leaned against him. Turns out peace is harder to achieve than success, but it's also better. Yeah, Noah said quietly. It is. Well, they sat in comfortable silence while the movie played to an ending neither of them saw. Outside, the city hummed with the constant activity of people chasing their own definitions of success. But inside this apartment, in this small space carved out of ordinary life, two people who'd been broken by different circumstances were slowly learning that healing didn't mean returning to what you were before. It meant building something entirely new out of the pieces that remained. And sometimes, if you were very lucky and very honest and willing to admit when you were wrong, those new things turned out better than anything you'd been before. 6 months later, Noah proposed. Not with grand gestures or public declarations, but quietly, while they were doing dishes after dinner at his apartment. He just said, "I think we should get married," like he was commenting on the weather. Olivia almost dropped the plate she was washing. "That's your proposal?" "Okay. I'm not good at romantic gestures. You know that. You could at least wait until we're not elbow deep in soapy water." "Why? This is real life. Real life is dishes and ordinary moments and choosing to build something permanent with someone even when they're not perfect." He dried his hands and looked at her seriously. "I love you. I don't trust easily and I'm difficult, and I'm always going to put Lily first. But I love you, and I think we could build something good together. So yes, that's my proposal. Do you want to get married or not?" Olivia looked at this man who'd saved her company twice, who'd taught her what actually mattered, who'd given her a second chance she absolutely didn't deserve. She thought about all the proposals she'd imagined as a younger woman, romantic and perfect and nothing like this. She thought about how none of those imagined proposals would have been real. "Yes," she said. "Let's get married." Yes. They told Lily the next morning. She was skeptical at first, worried about change, about what this meant for her life with her dad. But when they explained that nothing fundamental would change except that Olivia would be around more officially, she brightened. "Does this mean you'll come to my science fair?" Lily asked Olivia. "Of course. And my soccer games. Everyone you want me at." "Oh, okay. Then I approve." She went back to her cereal like they'd just discussed something no more significant than weekend plans. They got married in November. Small ceremony in Patricia's backyard with maybe 30 people present. No grand venue or elaborate planning. Just family and friends and colleagues who'd watched them build something real out of failure and stubbornness and the willingness to keep trying. During the ceremony, when it came time for vows, Olivia looked at Noah and said simply, "I promise to keep showing up, to keep being honest, to keep trying to be someone who deserves your trust. I can't promise I'll be perfect, but I can promise I'll keep working to be better." Noah's vows were equally unpolished. "I promise to keep giving you chances, to keep believing you can change, to keep building this life we're making together, even when it's hard. And I promise that Lily will always come first, but there's room for you too. There's always been room for you." It wasn't poetry. It wasn't the kind of vows people wrote for Instagram or wedding magazines. But it was true, and truth turned out to matter more than beauty. After the ceremony, during the reception, Patricia pulled Olivia aside. "Your father would have been proud," she said. "Not just of what you saved, but of who you became while saving it." "I didn't save anything alone." "No, but you learned to accept help. That's harder than it sounds." Patricia smiled. "I watched you go from someone trying to prove she deserved her position to someone who actually earned it. That's the real success story here." Later, Olivia stood at the edge of the reception watching Noah dance awkwardly with Lily to some song the DJ had picked. They both looked happy, genuinely, unself-consciously happy in a way that had nothing to do with achievement or status or proving anything to anyone. She thought about the person she'd been 2 years ago. The CEO terrified of failure, desperate to prove herself, measuring worth in titles and stock prices. That person would have looked at this moment, this small reception in a backyard, this marriage to someone who'd once stocked shelves because she'd destroyed his career, and seen compromise. Settling, a life smaller than what she'd been taught to pursue. But that person had been wrong about everything that mattered. This wasn't compromise. This was winning. Not the kind of winning that came with headlines or corner offices, but the kind that came with peace, with trust slowly rebuilding, with choosing presence over performance, with building something real instead of something impressive. She'd spent her whole life chasing success and discovered that success without substance was just expensive loneliness. She'd achieved everything she thought she wanted and found it wasn't enough. She'd lost everything and rebuilt from failure and learned that some things, trust, love, honest connection, couldn't be achieved through ambition. They could only be built through consistent choice, through showing up, through admitting mistakes, through valuing people more than positions. Noah saw her watching and beckoned her over. She joined them on the makeshift dance floor, and Lily immediately grabbed her hand and pulled her into their awkward circle. They danced without grace or skill, just three people who'd found each other through crisis and chosen to build something permanent from the wreckage. And in that moment, dancing badly in Patricia's backyard while November evening settled around them, Olivia understood something she'd spent her entire life missing. This was what she'd been ambitious for all along, not corner offices or board positions or proving herself to rooms full of skeptics. This, connection, trust, the messy reality of building a life with people who'd seen her fail and chose to stay anyway. Success, it turned out, wasn't about what you achieved. It was about what you built while achieving it. And whether, when you looked at your life honestly, you saw something worth keeping. She'd built something worth keeping, finally, imperfectly, but real. And that was enough.